Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we are going to talk about IDP snap counts. We're going to talk about defensive player alignment and positioning. We're going to talk about injuries. We're going to talk about waivers and trade targets. And with that, folks, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Ricky Rodrigue. You can find me on X at RickyRod66. I am joined by the talented IDP superstar, Mr. Shawn Teague, who you can find at Shawn8386 on X. We're thrilled to be here once again with you on Tuesday, September 30th to recap week 4, share some thoughts for week 5 and beyond. And as I mentioned in the intro, talk about snap counts, positional alignment, injuries, waivers, etc. Of course, as always, you can leave your questions or comments on this YouTube channel, on the show channel specifically. And Shawn and I will go in there periodically and answer your questions and respond to your comments. For example, we had people asking us to try and timestamp all 32 teams. We got that work for last week, so we are watching and listening and so forth, folks. And as always, we appreciate a thumbs up on the show as well as subscribing to the channel. All righty, with that though, we are ready to get started. We are going to start with the AFC East, and we're going to start within that with the Buffalo Bills, Shawn. And at the linebacker position, well, first, as I forgot where I always start, the Bills played 67 snaps against the lowly Saints, so a little bit above average. Saints being one of 3 teams that have yet to procure a victory. For those that are familiar, I am a Saints fan, and that's why I go there every once in a while. All right. At the linebacker position, we saw Terrell Bernard play basically 100% of the snaps, but only had 6 tackles. Very disappointing. He's off to a slow start to the year. I'll just leave it at that. He hasn't been as productive as we'd like. With Matt Milano out injured, Dorian Williams played that number 2 linebacker role, as we told you would happen, and has continued now for 2 weeks. He played 84% of the snaps. He also had 6 tackles. Shaq Thompson played the number 3 linebacker role, only having played 16% of the snaps, so we're not chasing Shaq Thompson. On the defensive line at the edge, Joey Bosa, while not in the high 80s this past week, still played 73% of the snaps, leading the edges on Buffalo's team in snaps played. In fact, Greg Russo was next at 66%. Joey Bosa continues to be fairly effective with 3 tackles, and this week getting a sack and a forced fumble. And a little known tidbit I found out through, I believe, is John Macri for PFF. Shout out to John. That Joey Bosa is leading the league in forced fumbles with 4, which, depending on your scoring system, is could be really powerful. So Joey Bosa, Shawn and I have talked about in the past, very injury prone. But so far, so good, knock on wood. Not much to talk about in the interior line other than Daquan Jones and TJ Sanders once again led the way with just over 50% of the snaps. At the safety position, Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop essentially played 100% of the snaps. In terms of their deep alignment, Taylor Rapp 54% deep, Cole Bishop 47% deep. Improvements there from where they were previously. However, this was against the Saints. This was against Spencer Rattler, who has not been testing anything deep. There's a reason he's hardly thrown any interceptions, and it's because he's just dinking and dunking and has a low average target depth. So that's why those guys were fairly close. Shawn, do you agree with my assessment there on those safeties and nothing really should change how we've been thinking about them? Or do you think, Ricky, you're misreading this thing?
No, I'm right there with you. Like I said, the Saints not having a very potent down the field attack, so of course the safeties are going to play up close to the line. So just a 1 week outlier here. We expect them to drop back a little deeper next week, probably in the 60s, maybe even 70s range.
Yeah, which won't be good for their productivity. And even being that close to the box and playing 67 snaps, Bishop had 5 tackles, Taylor Rapp only had 3. Now, Bishop did have an incredible interception on that weak attempted Philly special. But okay, I'll stop. All right. Leading the team in tackles for perspective was Tre'Davious White, the outside cornerback, who had 7 tackles. Teron Johnson, he did play a significant percent of the snaps, but only had 4 tackles. Last thing on the Bills, we're going to go back to Joey Bosa. Shawn, you've been just like we used to joke. Well, I shouldn't say used to. We regularly joke about Marcus Davenport staying healthy. We've been saying the same about Joey Bosa. But with this productivity, are you willing to take a bigger chance this week than you have in the past?
Yeah, I mean, Joey Bosa's always been productive when healthy, but it's just staying healthy has always been his Achilles heel there. So if you have him, start him. Just know that eventually he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But
So
as
you
long as
see
he's
him.
healthy, yeah,
You
give
see him as
him.
like a number 2 edge right now.
Uh, yeah, I'd feel comfortable with a 2. Not quite a 1, just for whatever reason, the Bills in general are just not producing a lot of anything, tackles or a whole lot of sacks, or he's leading the league with four forced fumbles, but he's not always getting a sack or a whole lot of tackles either. So 2 is probably a safe spot.
All right. Next, we're going to move on to the Miami Dolphins. Thank you, Shawn. And the Miami Dolphins played 63 snaps against the Jets on Monday Night Football. Boy, that was a gruesome Tyreek Hill injury. It's one of those things I couldn't look at. But once I saw him, like, I don't need to see any replays. I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. When your leg hangs like that, you know things are not well.
Exactly. So with the 63 snaps, the good news, Tyrell Dodson and Jordan Brooks both played 100% of the snaps. Jordan Brooks, 18 tackles, 15 of which were solo. Tyrell Dodson, 9 tackles, 5 solo, but he also pulled in a sack and a couple of tackles for loss as well. Both of them extremely productive. Last week, those numbers were kind of flipped with Dodson on the lead and Brooks trailing him, but this week it was flipped. And you're going to see that when you have 2 linebackers play 100% of the snaps. Now, guess who's leading the league in tackles now this week after this game, considering he had 18 tackles this past week?
Jordan Brooks sounds like the right
Jo-
answer.
Jordan Brooks is 44. And guess who's tied for second with 42 tackles?
It's got to be Dotson.
That would be Dotson as well. So these Dolphins linebackers are producing for your IDP teams, even though there are at times the Jets seem to be gashing them in the run game. Both the whole defensive line as well as the linebackers, and seems like they were chasing them to tackle them in some cases. But they're playing and they're getting those stats, so we're going to keep on playing them as well, folks. On the edge now, Jalen Phillips led the edge lineman for the Dolphins in playing time at 76% of the snaps. Bradley Chubb was second with 73. For perspective, Jalen Phillips was at 55% week one, is now all the way up to 76. Chubb was at 55%. He is up to 73%. On the other side of things, Chop Robinson, who started at 51%, is all the way down to 35%. Matt Judon was at 45%, all the way down to 24%. What that's telling us is Robinson and Judon aren't doing enough, and our Phillips and Chubb are doing a lot more. Phillips is in the top 20 in terms of some of the pass rush win rates and all. It hasn't really translated to success yet, as you can tell by having only 2 tackles, one of which was solo, one was obviously assisted then. He did get a fumble recovery, luckily. But Jalen Phillips, we've been talking about him because of the injuries he's been coming back from over the past couple of years. But maybe he's starting to turn a corner, Shawn, and is, despite the productivity, someone you might be able to get on waivers fairly cheap here.
Yeah, he's still out there in a lot of leagues, and him and Chubb both coming back from injury this year. Probably why we see them closer to a full rotation with Chop and Judon. earlier in the year. Now that they've gotten healthy and getting back in the groove, these guys are taking over a little bit more here too. This first game, Chubb has not gotten a sack, so he's actually been fairly productive in that category. Neither one are big tackle guys, so you kind of got to have the sacks or turnovers to really get some points. But it is encouraging seeing both of them play 3/4 of the snaps here.
Right. So I think I'd say both of them are trending upward. And at least Chubb, to your point, while first game he didn't have a sack, but at least he did come through with 3 tackles for us. On the defensive interior, Zach Sealer and everybody else, Sealer played 79% of the snaps, had 5 tackles. No one else played more than 50% of the snaps. Kenneth Grant, who at week 3 played 65% of the snaps, all the way down to 46%. Jordan Phillips, the rookie, who got off to a good start, played 67% of the snaps in week 2, is all the way down to 25% in week 4. Matthew Butler jumped up from 22% to 43%. So we see a little bit of shuffling in terms of playing time. None of these guys we want necessarily on our rosters, but maybe folks in the dynasty league situations. That's why I wanted to mention Grant and Jordan Phillips there. At the safety position, Shawn Minka Fitzpatrick played 100% of the snaps, only 2 tackles, and he only played 37% deep, which means he was in the slaughter box on 63% of the snaps. We've been talking this up and expecting more and more productivity. They played a standard 63 snaps, but boy, he's just not producing like we would hope. Is this an age thing, or what do you think's going on with Minka?
I think with the Jets not passing as much, and then just Tyrell Dotson and Jordan Brooks eating up all the tackles, they are tied for the league lead in solo tackles. So they're doing it all. One week it's one week it's the other, and there's not a whole lot to go around when somebody's getting, you know, 18 tackles in a game. That's a third of the snaps.
And we're going to see that similar situation when we talk about the Broncos from the Monday night game here a little bit later as well, in terms of linebackers eating up all the tackles. So you're not giving up on Minka yet.
No, I attribute this one to more of just a weird Jets offense. His usage is fantastic. So I'm willing to overlook a down week. He did kind of save it with a fumble recovery to an extent. I'm looking for him to do a little better next week for sure. I'm not giving up on him.
All right. Okay. And then the other safety position we don't want to touch right now, folks. Ifeatu Melifonwu was back, but he only played 29% of the snaps. Ashton Davis started, played 84%. Dante Trader got in there for 16%. But right now we want to stay away from that mess. The only other thing I'll mention is that Cornell Armstrong took over the slot position with Jason Marshall going on IR. So that kind of wraps up Miami, and let us move on to the New England Patriots, folks. The Patriots played a very nice 69 snaps against the Panthers in a blowout game. I always can make Shawn smile when I say that, so that's why I continue to do that periodically. Because of the blowout, Robert Spillane only played 74% of the snaps. He did get 10 tackles, so that's 2 weeks in a row. Spillane comes through for us with double digit tackles, which is fantastic. We're really nervous after the first 2 weeks. Things appear to be turning around because I think week 2 he only had 3 tackles. Christian Ellis played 57% of the snaps. Jack Gibbons played 45% of the snaps. Through 3 quarters, Christian Ellis had only played 50% of the snaps. This is this weird rotation, neither one taking full control. That's the bad news. The good news now, Gibbons had 12 tackles, including a tackle for loss. Christian Ellis had 9. This was against the Panthers. They did play 69 snaps in this game. And oh, by the way, Marte Mapu played 23% of the snaps as he's playing on obvious passing situations in this linebacker role. Shawn, Christian Ellis, Jack Gibbons, what are we doing with them, man?
If I'm in deep leagues, I picked up Jack Gibbons last week, and I did start him in I think just one of the leagues, just because I needed to. again, a very deep league, had to have somebody that was for sure playing. Uh, Anything short of a really deep league, it's scary. Maybe have them on your team, but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting them. Like I said, this was I think you can start 5 or 6 linebackers of this league. So your bodies you run out of bodies quick with 12 teams. So I took that risk there. Now, if it's only starting 2 linebackers, probably even 3, I'm not touching either one right now.
Yeah, now Christian Ellis, we've talked about in the past how he has defensive line eligibility
Mm-hmm.
on certain platforms and all. Even at 57%, would you play him in that defensive line role? I
I
think I would
suppose
because his tackling efficiency tends to be pretty good when he's playing even in that 50% range.
that's true. Um, it really just depends on what the rest of your defensive line looks like. Um, if you have like Miles Garrett and Will Anderson and it start 2, you got to start those 2 over Ellis. But if you're a very questionable, maybe you have Montez Sweat or somebody like that as your second defensive line option, yeah, throw Ellis in there.
All right, so moving to the edge position now. Harold Landry led the team at 71%. Once again, this was a blowout. But unfortunately, other than one quarterback hit, he put up a goose egg on tackles. Nada, nothing, zilch. Harold Landry, through his career, Shawn, how has he been from a tackles perspective?
He usually averages around 70 a season. So pretty decent numbers. Um, just one of those
So
weird
that makes this
weird
an
ones.
outlier, you would say,
Yeah, yeah,
Shawn.
yeah. I don't see this being a trend. This is just one of those weird matchups that just didn't pan out for him, and especially when you had 3 off-ball linebackers racking up 30 some tackles between them. So there wasn't a whole lot more to go around there. So yeah, don't panic on Landry. Fire him up as usual. High end number 2, low end 1.
Now, Calevon Chason, someone might have mentioned on a certain show that he thought there was going to be a sack for Calevon Chason, and
Doesn't ring a
his
bell.
crystal ball was accurate. Just saying, and it wasn't just because LSU. I just knew that was going to happen against the Panthers. I'll just leave it at that. Moving to the defensive line, Milton Williams and Christian Barmore both basically disappointed the crap out of us. We both played a little bit over 50% of the snaps. Milton Williams, one tackle. Christian Barmore, none, though he did have a couple of hits. Very disappointing. Um, Limited snaps that they played because of the blowout. We're not losing faith yet, but they're not number one defensive tackles right now. Craig Whitson played 99% of the snaps, and he played 71% of those deep, which is not what we want to see. He still had 5 tackles at least, but remember all those linebacker tackles that were happening in front of him as well. Jalen Hawkins got hurt near the end of the first half, injured his hamstring. He was replaced by Kyle Duggar. What was interesting is while Hawkins played 72% of his snaps deep, when Duggar came in, he played basically 69% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage, in the slot, in the box. Big difference in utilization between Hawkins and Duggar. If Hawkins is out, now Del Pettis also played 26% of the snaps, by the way. But if Hawkins is out, are we willing to put Duggar in, take that risk?
Yeah, if he's going to play that close to the line of scrimmage, yeah, yeah, we'll take that shot.
I think I'm willing, once again, depending on leagues and who's out there and how deep, but I think that's a gamble I'm willing to take if Hawkins is out. And the fact that he didn't come back at all, it's rare that someone leaves a game with a hamstring, doesn't come back in, and then plays the next week. At least it feels that way.
Yeah,
So I'm expecting Duggar to play and start this week. So if you're looking for somebody, particularly in a deep league, Kyle Duggar is your man. All righty. So that's all the news that we wanted to hit on the Patriots. Let's move to the Jets against the Dolphins. They only played 58 snaps against the Dolphins, so as you would expect, a lot of these numbers could be on the lower side. However, with that being said, Jamie and Sherwood had 10 total tackles. Now, only one of those was solo, so 9 were assisted, but at least that means he's freaking hustling and trying to get involved and trying to make tackles. He did get a pass defense as well. As a side note, he is tied for fifth in the league in tackles with 40. So over 4 games, that's an average of 10 a game. I like that math, folks. Okay, so we were wondering with Quincy Williams going on IR, with Marcelino McCrary Ball going on IR, who was going to start in the number 2 linebacker position? Was it going to be the rookie who goes by Kiko Maui,
Maui Goa.
Maui Goa? Thank you, sir. Or was it going to be Cam Jones or Mark Robinson, or who was it going to be? And it ended up being Kiko. Kiko played 90% of the snaps. He only had 5 tackles, 2 of which were solo. With a low round rookie, even though he's getting a lot of playing time. And yes, it's someone, at least I would recommend picking up. We'll see if Shawn feels the same way. But you have to manage your expectations fairly low. It's not like this was a first round off ball linebacker like a Jack Campbell, who, once he got, of course, even when he started as a rookie, he was playing more of the will and he wasn't wearing the green dot. But we already, at least we had higher expectations for Jack Campbell. We don't have quite those expectations for Kiko, do we, Shawn?
No, no. He's free to succeed as much as he likes or fail as much as he wants.
Right. That's well. That's
Free
my.
of judgment as a fifth round pick.
Jermaine Johnson was out again this week, although he hopes to play this week. And there's some positive vibes from some of the Jets beat writers that we should see Jermaine Johnson back this week. With that, Michael Clemens was jumped up to 71% of the snaps this week and had 3 tackles. Will McDonald, once again, 53% of the snaps, 2 tackles. He's not much of a tackle guy. And then when he doesn't get us those sacks, particularly in big play scoring systems, he usually doesn't do much for us. 3 of the 4 weeks he's played roughly in this, just call it the low to mid 50s from a snap count perspective, has Will McDonald. 1 week he was in the low 60s. So just know what you're signing up for. Pretty much a sack or bust there. By the way, I'm not recommending that you pick up Michael Clemens as a side note. Just thought I'd share that he was the leader there. Quinnen Williams, a defensive tackle, played 78% of the snaps, 5 tackles, including the tackle for loss. The one thing I liked about Quinnen Williams is even late in the game when they were trailing and the Dolphins were trying to run out the clock, he was really aggressively getting after things, Shawn. So we still like Quinnen Williams as a number 1 defensive tackle, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with no other big linebackers there to really eat up any tackles. He's still a force in that run game up front.
Now, in the safety position, Tony Adams returned after being out with an injury, played 100% of the snaps, which is fantastic. He played 60% of the snaps close to the box. This is fantastic. What was not fantastic was his out. Was, 1 solo tackle and 2 assisted tackles. He did get a pass defense as well. So that's what you get with Tony Adams. Might be getting a lot of playing time, but not much in productivity. And as a result of him being back, Malachi Moore went right back to the bench. He had 4 tackles last week. He still picked up 3 tackles, but a lot of that was special teams oriented because he only played 2 defensive snaps. Andre Cisco had a solid 8 tackles. Even though he played 62% of snaps deep, he came through with 8 tackles. I think that has to do with only one solid linebacker being up there, Shawn.
I think so too. And then just the way Miami was trying to throw around the ball a little more too. So the Tyreek Hill catches were down the field. So Cisco is automatically the coverage guy down there as well to help with coverage.
Right. And then on the cornerback position, other than Sauce Gardner whining that the referees are picking on him because the Jets are losing, the only thing I'll add is that Isaiah Oliver came in for Michael Carter. Michael Carter the second is their typical slot person. He left the game with a concussion. When he did, Isaiah Oliver came in and played that slot role, and he was very effective with 9 tackles. Now, to Shawn's point, Miami ran a lot of bootleg action, a lot of low crossers, things along those lines, which created a lot of opportunities for the safeties and the nickel cornerback. So That is the Jets. We're now going to move to the AFC North, and we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens, also known as the Baltimore MASH unit. And I'm really showing my age. I wonder how many people that are listening actually know about the show, the MASH show. That used to be a sitcom in Alan Alda. All right. Y'all can let us know on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and let us know if you're old enough to remember MASH. All right. The Ravens played 73 snaps against the Chiefs, so they're on the field a heck of a lot. Starting once again with the linebackers. Roquan Smith, a number one type of linebacker, folks, was one of the leaders and tacklers in the league, but not anymore, as he only played 40% of the snaps and had two tackles as he left with a hamstring injury. Heard two different reports, one that said he'd be out at least a couple of weeks, one that said he'd be out a few weeks, at least two, possibly three. We're going to want to watch that. But in the meantime, what this means is Teddy Buchanan, a fourth round rookie out of California who had usurped Trenton Simpson as the number two linebacker, moved into the number one role and wore the green dot. Oh, excuse me, Kyle Hamilton actually wore the green dot, but moved into that number one Mike role that Roquan Smith usually plays. Trenton Simpson moved into Buchanan's role, which was Simpson's old role. And then because this became such a blowout, Buchanan sat on the bench in the fourth quarter, and it was a combination of Trent Simpson and Jake Hummel that were playing in the game. Now, Buchanan was second on the team with seven tackles and 73% of the snaps. Shawn, where do you view Buchanan from a linebacker perspective? Do you see him as a two or a three as he moves into this Roquan Smith role, at least for the next couple of weeks?
You could probably put him as a low end two because expect this defense to be on the field a lot. There's a lot of injuries on offense. Possibly Lamar Jackson not playing for a couple of weeks as well. So a bad defense just got more dinged up here. So this isn't what we're used to. But with him being the top guy, guaranteed to be on the field the most. Yeah, high end two.
Yeah, so we're expecting 95 plus percent of the snaps for Buchanan, correct, Shawn?
Absolutely, if not 100.
Yeah. So people are going to ask, does that mean I should play Trenton Simpson, because he might be getting 85% of the snaps now? My answer is no. Shawn, do you disagree?
I'm right there with you. This possibly a rotation. They also brought in Eric Kendricks for a visit today. No word on a signing or anything, but that tells me they don't trust him.
Well, that also tells me that Roquan Smith the injury could be a little bit more severe.
I heard grade two hamstring, which I believe is about 3 games. Two at least, possibly three, sometimes four, just depending on just I guess the individual probably more than anything. So expect two at least.
So if Kendricks is signed, let's say he gets signed tomorrow, do you think he plays this Sunday?
I think he would be in that rotation with Trenton Simpson. Yeah.
But he typically plays the Mike role. So do you think that hurts Buchanan?
Um, I don't think it would. He's
I
still the
still think
younger,
Buchanan
faster
still
guy.
play. Yeah, still think Buchanan's going to play 95% of the snaps, even if that happens.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with that. Because we done said that Hamilton is the green dot now, so I wouldn't expect Kendricks just to come in off the street 3 days in and have the green dot too. That's asking a lot.
Even for someone as experienced as he is, I agree. It's a little bit more than see ball, run, chase ball, tackle ball.
Yeah,
A little bit more complicated than that. I agree with you. All right, moving to the edge side of things. Tavius Robinson led once again at 78%. Mike Green second, 62%. Odafe Owe third, 45%. Nice that Robinson got three tackles, including a sack and a pass defense to boot. Mike Green, some decent stats now with five tackles, three of which were solo, and a tackle for loss. Odafe Owe, boy, 45% can give up on him. But now what's interesting is Kyle Van Noy limited practices late last week. was still inactive, would lead to him being active this coming week. So while we're starting to get excited about Mike Green, he's still a rookie. He's still at edge. Don't get too excited and go spend a lot of fad money on Mike Green from a expecting a lot. We expect his. We should expect that his percent playing time will come down with Van Noy returning. Correct, Sean?
Yeah, I think so. Tavis Robinson's pretty much earned his spot on the other side there. And if Vinoy is healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he kicks inside a little bit as well, similar to a Andrew Van Ginkel type situation. It's hard to say right now. That this is all speculation, of course, guys. So don't take it to heart
That's
here.
that's an interesting call out that I didn't consider because Van Noy has done that in the past with the Patriots, in particular, where he has played a little bit off ball linebacker on the edge, etc. So that could be a fallback position that it might not be Simpson or Hummel or Eric Kendricks. We could see a little bit of Kyle Van Noy playing that along with the edge. So it'd be something to pay attention to when the games start up here this weekend. Now that would be great for Van Noy if he gets a decent amount of snaps in the box along with the edge work that he gets. So that's something we could get excited about if that happens. Nothing to talk about on the defensive interior other than Matabuike is on IR and is out for the rest of the year with a neck injury. Hopefully, it's something he can come back from. But when you have a neck injury, we saw that with Jeremiah Owusu Karamoa. Hopefully, he does the same thing doesn't happen to Matabuike that where JOK is that he missed all of the year, then was ruled out before this year even became close to starting. So hope for the best for him. Broderick Washington is also on IR. Travis Jones is supposed to at least be back this week to help them out a little bit. At the safety position, Kyle Hamilton actually led the team in tackles with 8 tackles, which is never a good sign when we talk about that when your safeties are leading the team in tackles. The good news is Hamilton played 48% of the snaps close to the box. The other good news for Malachi Starks is while he only had 2 tackles, he played 62% of the snaps in the slot or in the box. So with the injuries at linebackers and Hamilton wearing the green dot, boy, Sean, how is this going to play out with at the safety position, do you think, in terms of, is Hamilton going to have to play a little bit deeper because he's wearing the green dot, or is he going to play closer to the line to help with communications better? Or, what do you think is going to happen here, bud?
I, it's an absolute mess because it's all veterans that are gone. All the guys that know the place. So even if he wanted to play deep, they could kind of cover some of that as well. It's him and nobody else right now. All the old guys are gone. So I I expect him to play a lot because they're going to be on the field a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if he disappoints us going forward with some bad weeks just because he's not going to be near the ball trying to keep everybody else lined up, and I figure it'll take him out of the plays a little more.
Yeah, he could be worried about everybody else so much that his assignments, as good and talented as he is, could slip a little bit as he's trying to keep everybody else aligned. At the cornerback position, Nate Wiggins hurts his elbow, Marlon Humphrey hurts his calf. Haven't heard any reports yet on how long Wiggins might be out. Humphrey, they've said at least a couple of weeks on Humphrey as well. Keon Martin, the undrafted free agent who made the team, stepped in for Humphrey, played that slot position, and on 53% of the snaps actually came through with 5 tackles. That Baltimore Ravens slot position has been productive through the years, particularly with someone as talented as Humphrey. I'm not saying that Martin is as talented as Humphrey, but with all the mess in front of them, it very well could create some additional opportunities for Martin. Sean?
Yeah, I'll pick him up. I'm actually targeting him for at least the next couple of weeks. I already have him in 1 or 2 leagues. Just because Marlon Humphrey was banged up a little earlier this year, and we didn't know how that was going to play out just then. So, um, yeah, for quarterback required leagues, I take a shot on him.
All right, moving on to the Bengals then, who played 81 snaps on defense because their offense couldn't do more than 3 and out. It was bad, and unfortunately, my Joe Burrow MVP prediction went by the MVP prediction went by the wayside with his injury. Unfortunately, I'm glad I didn't put money on it at least. But 81 snaps on defense. Holy cow! Now let's talk about the linebackers. Logan Wilson only played 80% of the snaps. Barrett Carter came in on played a couple of full series and also was in there at the end of the game as well. And now 80% of 81 snaps is still 65, which is basically a full game's worth of defensive snaps. But with that, Wilson only had 5 tackles, 2 of which were solo. Demetrius Knight played 88% of the snaps, tied for the team lead in tackles with 10. He also had an interception in the end zone, which he almost dropped, but luckily he held on to with the help of his midsection and legs and so forth. But he came through for us with a big game. Barrett Carter played 25% of the snaps. He was the one that played in Logan Wilson's position when Logan Wilson was out, as we talked about last week. And I saw him on the field for a couple of, where they had 3 linebackers on the field a couple of times instead of Oren Burks. So he had 4 tackles. I believe one of those was on special teams, if I remember correctly. Shawn, is it time to stash Barrett Carter if people didn't listen to when we discussed this last week? Should they be going to the waiver wire and picking up Barrett Carter?
Dynasty, yeah, you're stashing him. You're getting excited. Redraft, if you have the spot on the bench for him, yes, but he's not doing enough to warrant starting yet. So this is
Right.
only if you have the room for him to sit on your bench. And on the flip side, if you have Logan Wilson, feel free to drop him if somebody better is out there. I have.
And so, for perspective, and once again, particularly in shallow leagues, there's no reason you need to keep
You're
Logan
right,
Wilson.
right, right.
In week 2, he played 100% of the snaps. That's the only week he played 100% of the snaps. In the other 3, he played 84, 78, and as we just mentioned, 80. His playing time is just poof. That's a technical term. All right. Moving to the edge, there's not a whole lot to talk about there, except Miles Murphy actually played the most snaps on the edge. Now, the game was a little bit of a blowout, so he played a little bit more as a result of that. But there was a Miles Murphy sighting in that he had 3 tackles, 2 of which were solo. So I had personally given up on Miles Murphy. We have kind of dogged him a little bit on on previous shows, Shawn. But maybe there's a little bit of a light turning on, maybe something to watch. But then probably not.
Now,
And then Shawn,
81 snaps, he was bound to run into somebody.
or accidentally trip somebody and not get called for a penalty.
There you go.
Um, Joseph Osai, we expect to continue to start next across from Hendrickson. Shamar Stewart, when he comes back, will get plenty of playing time as well. So while we're teasing by this Miles Murphy thing, don't get excited about the 64% and the 3 tackles, folks. Moving to the defensive line, just want to call out BJ Hill. BJ Hill was a really solid defensive tackle, folks. Doesn't get many sacks, but usually is good for several tackles a game. But he's a defensive tackle. Some games it'll only be 1 or 2, but like 64% of the snaps, 5 tackles, including the tackle for loss. Good, solid defensive tackle there. Moving on to the safeties, tying Demetrius Knight for the team lead in tackles with Geno Stone with 10. Jordan Battle tied for second along with Dax Hill with 9. Both Battle and Stone played 100% of the snaps, with both of them playing over 60% of the snaps deep, including Battle at 65%. With the as bad as the Bengals defense is, I've now come to your side of the fence, Shawn, and saying I can trust Jordan Battle even with him playing so many snaps deep because the front 7 is getting obliterated and creating plenty of opportunities for him. You win on this one, Shawn.
I got one, guys. Let me write that down. Timestamp that 39,
Yeah,
29.
timestamp that one for sure. We don't have to timestamp the stuff out there for folks, but Jordan Battle is 6th among all defensive backs in tackles with 32 as a side note. We'll talk about some of the others here as we move forward, but he is 6th. At the cornerback position, a little bit nervous in that Dax Hill, who had been playing 100% of the snaps, he was playing outside and then would move to the slot, only played 79% of the snaps this week. Didn't see where there was any injuries associated with him. Now, when he was in the game, he did play 87% of the snaps within the box slash slot, which is fantastic. But I just got a little bit nervous. Now, similar to what we're talking about for Battle, Hill has 9 tackles. He is willing to put his body in there and make the tackles. He has had some injury situations in the past, but if you go back a few years, he was one of the top tacklers among defensive backs. So, particularly for a cornerback that's going to get you a lot of tackles, he is someone to target. All right, we're going to move to the Cleveland Browns next, and they played 60 snaps against the Lions. Carson Schwarzenegger, 93%, and Devin Bush, 82%. So once again, above 80%. But he also, in that 82%, tied for the team lead in tackles with 9, 6 of which are solo. We talked about him last week, Shawn, but for some of those that may have missed the show, I think we're still pretty bullish right now on Devin Bush, particularly with still no indication of any potential suspicion right now.
Yeah, he seems to be in the clear. His playing time is solid, but his efficiency is even better. And that's so far he's showed he can do it week after week, which is enough for me to feel comfortable putting him in. In fact, we had a question come up this past Sunday on the Start Sit show about Devin Bush, or I forget who the other one was. Uh, but we recommended Devin Bush, that he is safe enough to put in, and it looks like it paid off this week. So, yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. Right. Now, moving to the edge position, Myles Garrett did not get a sack this week, but he is tied for sixth in sacks in the league with 4. So, yeah, they're not going to get sacks every week, folks. And the Lions have a really good offense with Jared Goff being a really smart quarterback. So, he got rid of the ball quickly. The other thing, remember when Isaiah McGuire was a thing for a week?
Yeah, week one. That was a long, feels like a month
And
ago.
that's because it pretty much was. And everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people went out and spent a lot of fab on that first week, and he's basically done nothing since. Now, he was second in snaps on the edge for the Browns with 55%, and with that, you got 1 assisted tackle. Moving to the defensive tackles, just a quick note: Mason Graham played 75% of the snaps. No, he didn't get any tackles. He did get a quarterback hit, but love seeing this playing time for the rookie. Malik Collins, who we talked about how he is up and down, up and down. This is 2 weeks in a row of up, including 5 tackles and a quarterback hit. So if buys are starting a little bit, if he's out there on your waiver wire, I haven't looked at the matchups for this coming week in terms of do they have a good matchup or not, but he's someone to at least look and consider if he's out there on the waiver wire, depending on the size of your leagues. Ronnie Hickman at safety, despite playing 62% of the snaps deep, tied for the team lead in tackles with Devin Bush with 9. Grant Delpit, who played 66% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage, only had 5 tackles. He's infuriating the crud out of me. And he went to LSU. But boy, his floor is even lower than I like to see. Granted, they only played 60 tackles with Shawn. Grant Delpit, low end 2 right now, maybe high end 3 even. Where you have him?
Yeah, low end 2. His floor is about 5 tackles, 4 or 5 tackles, and then we seen his ceiling last week with 9 and an interception. I think he is frustrating because he'll give you those low floors. Then you'll bench him, and that's when he gets his interceptions and his double digit tackle games and all that fun stuff. So if you have somebody more consistent, and by more consistent I mean Jordan Battle, I'd probably start Jordan Battle over Grant Delpit.
Right. So moving now to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They played 76 snaps against the Vikings, so they were on the field quite a bit. Patrick Queen played 100% of those, was second on the team in tackles with 11, but he also got a sack as well. So he had a really nice, productive day. But once again, the Steelers play games with us. Peyton Wilson goes back to that 87% range of the snaps. Cole Holcomb, who in one league I got to play against Hohokam, so I was really glad to see that where it got this way in that game. But he only played 13% of the snaps. When they went through the starters for the Steelers at the beginning of the game, they listed Cole Holcomb as the starter next to Patrick Queen. But clearly, that's not how it played out. And clearly, the Steelers didn't want people to know that it was going to play out this way. And Peyton Wilson ended up leading the team with 13 tackles, including 2 tackles for loss and a quarterback hit. So, very, very productive game. Shawn, are we going to trust the Steelers to play Peyton Wilson again next week? And we're going to put him in our lineups where we typically would? Or are you going to sit this one out? I
I
think I'm taking the gamble of putting him in.
I am too, and that's because even last week when it was a much closer, more even rotation, he still produced quite a few tackles. So his efficiency is there. So I'm willing to take that risk, and hopefully that was just like a one game. Hey, calm down, get yourself right. Here you go. Now we're back up to 80% or whatever. Hopefully that's the way it's going to be going forward. I don't know if I don't really think it was matchup based here against the Vikings. I don't see where the benefit would have been there. So yeah, just plug him in and reap the benefits.
Right. Now, on the edge side of things, TJ Watt, who was kind of missing early in the season, has now started turning on, coming in with 5 tackles and another sack again this week with a couple of quarterback hits. Nick Herbig, one of the best number 3 edges for his team across the league, 87% of the snaps, 5 tackles, 3 quarterback hits, 1.5 sacks. He's putting up Alex Highsmith type numbers here as he's substituted for Alex Highsmith. Unfortunately, Highsmith will be back at some point, probably not this week. Enjoy Herbig while you can, folks, but Highsmith will eventually come in and replace him. Shawn, any disagreement with that?
Yeah, he's a starter on other teams. I'm probably half the league. If Carolina had a Nick Herbig right now, you know what I mean? Like they have nobody, so he could be starting if he was on another team. If he went behind Watt and Highsmith, so yeah, fire him up.
All right. So then at defensive tackle, Cam Hayward, 70% of the snaps after a phenomenal game the week before, only had 1 assisted tackle this week. We're not losing sleep on that, folks. Keep on playing Cam Hayward right now. Keanu Benton had a sack and a half along with 4 tackles and 3 quarterback hits. Shawn, are we chasing Keanu Benton?
No,
We are not chasing Keanu Benton, folks. Don't. You're gonna if you start by points last week and he's going to be up near the top. Don't fall into the trap, folks. This is one of those 1 week outliers. Don't go there. Derek Horman still played about 46% of the snaps. Only had 1 assisted tackle. Did get a quarterback hit in the pass defense. Over time, as we talked about last week, we expect that to get up into the mid 60s, maybe even close to 70% here. But it's going to take some time for the rookie to continue to produce, but someone we're interested in, particularly for Dynasty. At safety position, the Steelers' secondary has been this mess and it continued to be a mess. The one very, very positive thing is the Shawn Elliott return. We predicted that he would play 100% of the snaps, basically. He was the one to own. And sure enough, that's what he did. And boy, did he have a line with 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, a sack, a pass defense, an interception, and I believe he had a forced fumble as well, if I remember correctly. And he played 63% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. Deshaun Elliott, top 12 safety for sure, huh, Shawn?
absolutely. Good to have him back.
And Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark. Thornhill, 66% of the snaps, Clark, 41%. They basically alternated. Jabril Peppers didn't see any snaps on defense, which I have to admit was a little bit of a surprise to me and a shock. But if you took a flyer for the last spot on your bench, just in case, raise your hand if you did that in one of your leagues. I did that. I
Yep,
will be dropping him this week to pick up somebody else.
I'll be doing the same.
Yeah. Now, Jalen Ramsey only played 72% of the snaps. There's no indication of injury.
Uh,
Very,
there there is indication of injury.
I missed that, Shawn. Would you tell the audience here?
So they're saying a hamstring injury, and there's a chance he misses a week or two here. It was the last I heard not too long ago, just a few hours ago. So it's not being promoted like a lot of these other injuries. So I actually had to dig to find this.
Okay, so thanks for finding that, Sean. That's what makes you such a great tag team partner on this stuff. So Jalen Ramsey was one that I had predicted for a top five cornerback this year. Unfortunately, between the injuries, the outside corner with Joey Porter, which had him playing a little bit more outside, and now him having this injury, obviously that's impacting that. And his numbers just haven't been where we'd like him as well because he's just not playing enough in that star position. For now, Sean, with all the other cornerbacks out there, I think we can be comfortable, particularly with his hamstring injury. If you don't have an IR spot, just dropping Jalen Ramsey at this point.
Yeah, there's always another corner out there. We just seen Keon Martin become available and just gain a lot of value this week. So I would I would make that swap.
All right, moving on to the Texans now, and at the linebacker position, and not only Houston Texans, but moving to the AFC South, or even more specifically, the against the Titans. The Texans only had to play 50 snaps on defense. Not a surprise with how bad the Titans' offense is. Aziz Al-Shaair played 94% of those snaps, even in the blowout game that this was. He only had three tackles, one quarterback hit, one pass defense. But on 47 snaps, you're not going to get a lot, particularly the way Cam Ward is throwing it so erratically and not even creating tackle opportunities because his passing completion rate is so bad. Where it gets interesting is at the number two linebacker position. We talked about this last week, and Ricky made a prediction. It looks like part of it is coming true because Ricky predicted that by the November timeframe, we're going to see Christian Harris and EJ Speed as the starting linebackers for the Texans. It looks like the transition from Toto to Speed started happening in the second half of this game. Toto was in the high 80% last week, which was down from the week before being in the high 90s. Played 70% of snaps in the first half and only 25% in the second half this week. Whereas EJ Speed played 90% of the snaps in the second half. Now, I don't know if I'm running out to start EJ Speed this week, Sean, but I also don't think I'm starting Henry To'o either this week.
No, I'm staying away from these guys, just like I have all season. I've never felt really comfortable with any of these guys outside of Al Shair. And even then, he doesn't always produce the type of games I really want either. So I've actually avoided every Texan uh, at all costs. So I suggest you guys do the same until something happens to
Here's
where we can for sure say this is your starter, this is the number two, and there's no risk of rotation.
building on that Jabril Peppers comment from earlier in that last spot on my bench. I'm going to go and get EJ Speed and put it, if I can, and put him into that spot and see how this plays out for another week.
Yeah, if you got the
So,
spot on the bench, yeah, I'll always keep that rotating with the next half flavor of the week, I guess. Yeah, that's not a bad play. And if he becomes something, then hey, you stole it from an opponent. And if he doesn't pan out, you just drop him, do it again.
and we've seen that with the Colts, even though he wasn't always the most effective from like a PFF grade perspective, he put up significant stats for a couple of years with the Colts. So if he gets the playing opportunity, even though I did when I was watching part of the game, I did see him miss a tackle. like, yep, that looks like EJ Speed, but he still gets plenty. So anyway, EJ Speed is someone Ricky's on for a deep stash, folks. All right, moving to the edge. Daniil Hunter bounced back after a slow game the week before, picking up two sacks. He's now tied for sixth in the league with four sacks. There's several people that you'll hear me say that about. That's the second one at this point in time. Will Anderson, who had a much better game the week before, let us down without having any sacks this week. He did get two tackles and a quarterback hit, but he's someone that we're playing every week, right, Sean?
Yeah, but I can still be disappointed in him. because this was
Yeah.
a terrible Titans offense. That's one we like to target each week. And just like we seen the week before, I believe Jared Verse, didn't didn't really produce against them either. So, but Byron Young did. So, um, yeah, no worries about Will Anderson here.
Yeah, we're going to keep on playing him. At the safety position, MJ Stewart took over for Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who the Texans released because of his bad attitude. At least that's what rumor has it. Stewart played 90% of the snaps. He played 42% of that in the slot and box, which we like. But when the Titans only played 50 snaps and they had a really poor offense, that only created 4 tackle opportunities for him. He did have a pass defense, which is good. But MJ Stewart is more of a safety three, Shawn. That's someone we're chasing. And there's still a risk that Jalen Mills gets called up from the practice squad.
Yeah, and Jimmy Ward, once he's healthy, will be coming back at some point as well, it looks like. So if you're in a really deep league with maybe 4 starting safeties, you take a shot on him. But outside of that, I might have him sit on my bench, but that's it.
Yeah. I'm not even putting him on my bench, to be honest with you, folks. All right, moving to the Colts. They played 75 snaps against the Rams, which is a lot of snaps. Unfortunately, Zaire Franklin only had 7 tackles and only one was solo. He did have a quarterback. He had a chance for an interception that he could have potentially had, but he dropped. So not very productive at all in my, for the number of snaps, in my opinion. Joe Bacci down to 47% of the snaps. He had 5 tackles, 2 of which were solo. Now, a couple other things to note about the Colts in their 53-man roster. Cam McGrone was released today, so someone who was supposedly competing with Bocce for a role and that Bocce barely beat out got released. Buddy Johnson was signed off of the Cowboys practice squad and is now in the Colts 53-man. We don't expect Buddy Johnson to move in a role, but Jalen Carley's is right now eligible to be activated off the injured reserve list now after 4 weeks have passed. But interestingly enough, unless something's come in the last couple of hours, I haven't seen any indication from the Colts that they're going to open the 21-day window for him to start practicing.
No, I haven't heard a word. And even then, this guy's so far behind on practice after missing all of preseason, all of camp and everything. It would take a little while for him to actually pick up speed. So maybe something not quite as bad as Jared Waller sitting out for 3 weeks into the season, but I would expect him to need 2 or 3 weeks just to really get going. That's just a guess, but no indications of
Yeah.
it happening soon.
At least so right now, if you don't have an injured reserve spot, he's not someone you need to go out and stash quite yet on your bench because we just don't see the playing time anytime soon. And with buys coming up, you're going to get forced to drop him. And you might even draw attention to him. So leave him on the waiver wire right now, and we'll kind of give you some more guidance as the weeks progress on when we might say to go ahead and get him. Okay. At the edge position, only one of the edge players for the Colts played more than 50% of the snaps, and that was Leatu Latu. He played 64% of the snaps, 4 tackles, including a sack and 2 quarterback hits, and a pass defense. So good all around game for Latu. See him as a number 2 edge right now, Shawn?
Yeah, yeah, I know he didn't get the sacks we wanted last week, but yeah, he's the only one I trust out of this group for sure.
Yep. Ebukon played 49%, Pay played 45%, Taekwon Lewis played 41%. Remember that big game Taekwon Lewis had last week, and we said don't chase
Mm-hmm.
folks? Well, he put up a goose egg this week. Nada, zilch, nothing, zero, right? Um, and then JT Tuamolo, something like that, the rookie from Ohio State, the second round pick, he got 12% of the snaps as well. So they played 75 snaps. That's how it was divided. There really wasn't any other productivity except for Latu there. DeForest Buckner, the stud defensive tackle, 77% of the snaps, 8 tackles, including a couple of tackles for lost, quarterback for hit. Even in his 30s, he continues to be a monster. Man, if I'm in a dynasty league and I've got a chance to win it all, I'm going to trade for him and trying to get him and add him into my defensive tackle spot. Nick Cross at safety led the team with 14 tackles, also got half a sack as part of that, and played 73% of the snaps in the slot slash box. Beautiful line all the way across for him. He's tied for second among defensive backs in tackles with 34. Obviously, that 14 boosted, but you take that out, that would leave 20 over the first three games, which is between 6 and 7 tackles per game, which is an incredible floor. We love us some Nick Cross. On the cornerback side of things, Ricky was wrong on one thing. See, I admit when I'm wrong. I expected Mekhi Blackman actually to play the slot role, particularly since he was so productive the week before, and he had a little bit of that experience with Minnesota and USC in college. But it was actually Mike Hilton who played 77% of the snaps in total and played 100% of the snaps in the slot in that Kenny Moore role. Now, he didn't give us Kenny Moore stats with only 3 tackles, but it was Mike Hilton, not Mekhi Blackman. Moore, they said he'd be out a couple of weeks. Shawn, even if you're desperate at cornerback, you're not looking at Mike Hilton, are you?
No, I don't think so. There's got to be somebody else there. Keon Martin's probably out there.
That is true. All right, moving to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars played 66 snaps against the 49ers. And boy, once again, they played games with us a little bit at linebacker. Now, in fairness to them, let's be a little bit more transparent. Foye Oluokun only played 83% of the snaps, but it was because he was injured. Now, he only had 7 tackles, 2 of which were solo. Once again, he gets a boost from forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. But from a pure tackle perspective, Oluokun hasn't been delivering like the Oluokun of old, Shawn. He's someone I think I'm trying to trade high on the name right now, particularly the way Devin Lloyd's playing, and I'll let you elaborate on Devin Lloyd if you'd like as well.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving off of Luakon while you can, especially after he did have, I believe, that the big week 1 game there. So the name value is still there. If you can get something out of him, go for it. Now, Devin Lloyd, they best with us all year, rotation, Ventura Miller. Well, he kind of came back some last week. Looked solid. We didn't know if we could trust it this week. 94%. 8 tackles, 2 deflections, 2 interceptions, tackle for a loss. I mean, that's fantastic. So I had him in quite a few leagues. Benched him. I never dropped him. I'm feeling comfortable putting him back in my starting lineup after seeing the production he's been getting the last few weeks.
Yeah, but based on the playing time the last couple of weeks, as well as the productivity the last couple of weeks, so I'm comfortable putting him back into my lineup as well. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of start sit questions about Lloyd versus whatever when we get on this YouTube channel. You can put your questions and comments here, or come to our start sit show, which we do every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. Have a lot of fun with it. We talk about a lot of last minute info that comes in, particularly like Saturday inactives, not Saturday inactives, Saturday call ups from practice squads. That tells us a lot as well. Come join us in another learning opportunity. We have a little bit of fun as well as part of it. 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central on the IDP Plus YouTube channel. Foye Oluokun, while he was banged up, guess who replaced him? Was it Ventrell Miller, Shawn?
It was not.
It was not. It was Jack Kaiser who played 17%. So the rookie out of Notre Dame appears to have moved into that number 3 linebacker spot ahead of Ventrell Miller. So this has gone from Ventrell Miller leaping past Devin Lloyd for the number 2 spot to them rotating to Ventrell Miller just falling off the face of the earth, folks. The big news on the edge side of things for the Jaguars, Travon Walker, wrist injury, went to see a specialist, only played 18% of the snaps, still waiting to hear more. I'm guessing he's going to miss at least this week if I was a guessing person. Shawn, have you heard anything more than that at this point in time?
The best I've heard is it is not considered season ending. So that's always a plus. But if he's done with this many specialists, it's making me wonder if it's going to be a 2-week thing or like a 5-week thing.
Right.
And I'm
So
just throwing numbers out there, guys. Don't take those to heart. But I don't look for him to be out there this week.
I agree with that. So in his absence, just so you all know, Agba played 65% of the snaps. That's Emmanuel Agba. Dewan Smoot played 53% of the snaps. So those are your backups, but I'm hoping that you're not that desperate that you're having to pick those guys up. Hopefully, there's a little bit more in your waiver wire than that. Moving to the safety position, Andrew Wingard played 100% of the snaps. A little bit disappointing on the stat line considering he only had 5 tackles, 1 pass defense, and he did have a fumble recovery. But there could be a reason. He ended up playing 64% of the snaps deep. The reason he played 64% of the snaps deep is that Eric Murray left the game with a neck injury and only played 45% of the snaps. Antonio Johnson came in and played 44% of his snaps closer to the line of scrimmage as his replacement. So, bad news. Some say Wingard, some say Wingard. I'm not sure which one it is. To be honest with you, I don't pay that close attention when they announce it sometimes when I'm watching the games. But this has to knock Wingard back a little bit if Eric Murray's out, based on that usage and utilization if he's playing that deep safety role, Shawn. And we don't want to drop him necessarily, and we want to see how long Eric Murray will be out. But, well, we might want to look for someone else to put in our lineup this week.
Yeah, I agree. Bench him, but yeah, don't drop him just yet. And the reason he's playing deep is because Antonio Johnson is a liability in coverage, so they don't want to rely on him as their deep safety. So that's the reason for this. If Murray's only out for a couple games, then hold on to him, and then when Murray is back, we should get to see him up near the line of scrimmage where we want him.
Now, the other thing with Wingard, real quick, is excuse me, with Johnson, real quick, is that look, last year he couldn't beat out the likes of Darnell Savage. He couldn't beat out the likes of Andre Cisco, who the Jacksonville was more than happy to let go. He does struggle in coverage, as Shawn talked about. So he's not someone we're chasing either, folks, even if Murray's out for a longer period of time. So just stay away from that. Tyson Campbell at cornerback actually led the team in tackles with 9. Tyson Campbell has always been a nice, solid tackler from a cornerback position. Just can't count on that necessarily every week. But he led the team with 9. And just going back to Devin Lloyd actually finished second on the team in tackles with 8. So that kind of wraps up Jacksonville. We're going to move over to Tennessee. And if they played only 50 snaps on offense, you would expect they probably played a few more snaps on defense than average. And that would be correct in that they played 71 snaps. And as a reminder, 63, 63 and a half is usually an average amount of snaps per game for a defense. Cody Barton led the team with 100% of the snaps, and he had 9 tackles. Typical Cody Barton line, folks. 6 tackles, excuse me, 6 solo, 3 assisted. There's your Cody Barton. Nothing else in this particular case. But the big news, and once again, another great reason to join the Start Sit show on Sunday. A week ago, well, 2 weeks ago, we saw Kaiser White being elevated from the practice squad on Saturday. We said, be careful, Cedric Gray, don't play him. And what happened? Cedric Gray's snap count was down. It was right to not play him. Although he did okay in the snaps that he played, but it wasn't very, wasn't very good. This week, Kaiser White did not get called up from the practice squad, and we talked about that in the Start Sit show. And that was an opportunity to potentially play Cedric Gray again. And what did Gray do? Holy crud! 17 tackles, 10 of which were solo, a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit. He is now tied for, excuse me, he is 12th in the league in tackles with 36. So considering he played about half a game in week 3, at 17 tackles certainly boosted him up the tackle chart. Shawn, next week, assuming Kaiser White is not called up from the practice squad, are you playing Cedric Gray?
Absolutely. We've mentioned in the past this guy's a tackling machine. It's his coverage that is suspect, and that's part of the reason for the rotations. But he's done enough to hold off Kaiser White this past weekend. Let's hope he does it again.
Assuming he plays like that and there's no Kaiser White, is he a linebacker 2 or linebacker 3 in your mind?
Oh boy, if he's putting up those kind of numbers, a 2 for sure. I don't expect that every week, but 10's a very real possibility. this team's going to be on the field a bunch. They're awful, offense and defense. So 15 is probably not out of the question, actually. So
All
yeah,
right. So
two.
we're in on playing Cedric Gray, folks, for next week, assuming Kaiser White is not activated. We want to watch that carefully. Not much else to talk about. Arden Key did get a sack, but he only played about 50% of the snaps. Don't chase the sack, folks. Nothing really else to talk about on the edge side of things. A defensive tackle, Jeffrey Simmons, having a fantastic year. We talked about him earlier in the year. We talked about him in our top 24 show, how we thought he was going to have a really good year. 5 tackles, including a sack. Considering how bad the team is playing, for him to continue to play like that, kudos to the man. He's earning the good fat contract that they gave him. At the safety position now, this was a blowout. We've talked about it before. When it's a blowout, sometimes you have to be careful about snap counts. While the linebacker snap count kind of held at safety, Xavier Woods played 79% of the snaps. Amani Hooker played 69%. Quandre Diggs, 62%. As a result, Hooker and Diggs only had 5 tackles. Woods had 4 tackles. Hooker continued to have great utilization with 65% close to the line of scrimmage. And as a reminder, I haven't said it yet today, but when I say close to the line of scrimmage, that means on the defensive line, in the box, or covering at slot, or in the slot, I should say, when I say close to the line of scrimmage. So Hooker's getting great utilization. Unfortunately, just didn't play many snaps during this blowout. Kevin Winston Jr. continues to get limited practice time. Got up to doubtful this week. Do you think here that Winston in the next couple of weeks is going to get into this mix, and we're going to see Hooker and Winston as your starting safety, Shawn, with either Woods or Diggs rotating in as the third safety that gets about 40% of the snaps?
I mean, they should. They have nothing to play for, so you may as well see what your draft picks are worth out on the field. So I think so. Diggs and Woods are both getting up there in age, especially for safeties. So we could see one or both of them start losing more time once Winston is fully healthy and able to get on the field there. So something to look out for. I think we're still a couple of weeks away from that.
Yep, agree. So even if he's active this week, folks, don't go chasing him right now, but it's something we're keeping an eye on, particularly if you're hurting at the safety position. Okay, moving to the Broncos, who absolutely destroyed the Bengals, as we talked about earlier in one of the 2 Monday night games here. Really quite the blowout game. The Bengals offense could do nothing without Joe Burrow, and the hopes for Jake Browning, unfortunately, not good. But anyway, with that, they only played 48 snaps on the field. Alex Singleton played 100% of the snaps, and I said I would talk about this earlier in the show. He had 11 tackles on 48 snaps. That's pretty freaking efficient, folks. Those are some really good numbers. Now, I've been down on Alex Singleton, I must admit, but at least right now he's proving me wrong. He's tied for 7th in the league in tackles with 3 others at a total of 38. So trending upwards. But boy, Shawn, great game for that. But before I let you come in on linebackers, I do want to call out Justin Sternert only played 56% of the snaps and only had 3 tackles, one of which was solo. So Dre Greenlaw, within a couple of weeks of coming back, Shawn, if you don't have injured reserve spots and Dre Greenlaw's up there, are you stashing Greenlaw or are you going to wait one more week before you try and stash him?
Um, I would probably try to pick him up now if you have the room. If not, then obviously wait. But yeah, if you have the room and don't have anybody that you're just needing to hold on to, yeah, go for it. Because when he comes back, we expect this to be a lot different. We expect this to be closer to 2 full-time linebackers and not like I said, Stranahan just said 56%. That's really low. And when we look at the game, I assume this is more game script this week. I know he has been kind of coming down a bit. Or
Yes,
actually,
he has
he
been.
was going, yeah, 60, 80,
He,
80, and
he,
then back down. So
yeah, he went 67, 80, 81, and now back to 56, correct.
I think this was a game plan thing here at alignments that we'll talk about here with the cornerbacks here in a little bit. But I expect him to actually go back up to around that 70 range next week. So don't
Yeah,
panic,
I am.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
boy, right now, particularly with the end of the road coming for Sternert, I'm looking for something else right now to potentially replace him if you don't have anything, because he will be going to the bench. It's just a question of when, not if, once Greenlaw's back. Now, I will jump to the. Oh, you quite, Sean.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I will jump to the cornerback position because while Sterner played 56% of the snaps, what was interesting is Jahdae Barron, the rookie, played 44% of the snaps, and he played 86% of that in the slot/box area. So was this part of a scheme thing where they put Sterner out more and had Barron on the field more? And so because one of the things they liked about Barron, how interchangeable he was at many positions. Now, it wasn't necessarily going to be a linebacker, but Cincinnati did run a lot of three wide and were playing catch up quite a bit. So that could have led to the reason back to the game script that led to Sterner being on the field less and Barron being on the field more.
Also, you had Mike Gesicki, who is a receiving tight end, so he was on the field running routes as well. So practically four wide. That's probably why we've seen four corners on the field so much this past week.
That's a great call out because Noah Fant was injured with his concussion and was inactive for the game. So Gasicki was on the field more. That is correct. Great call out. So the only other thing on the cornerbacks is they didn't get much production because there weren't many completed passes because
48 snaps.
Cincinnati. Exactly. All right. On the edge, even with just 60% of the snaps, Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito would continue to be fantastic. With Bonito, another sack and a half, Cooper with a half a sack. They met at one the quarterback on one of those sacks. I'm like, oh, how are they going to do this one? They each got half a sack on is how it happened. But they could have shook hands right there. It was they could have passed sugar if one of them was baking. They got right next to each other at the quarterback. So anyway, great game for Benito. I have to admit, I was a little bit lower on Benito than I should have been at the beginning of the year. He's having a fantastic year, tied for third in the league with sacks with 4.5. And so keep on riding Benito, folks. Zach Allen moving to the interior, continues to play in that 80% of the snap range. He was at 79, but once again, continued very limited productivity. Not for him not hustling or trying because I'm watching because I have him in one of my favorite leagues, but only 2 assisted tackles. Hoping for more for Zach Allen, but right now, someone dropped Ashawn Robinson right before, and so I picked him up and I put him on my bench. I didn't start him over Zach Allen, but depending on matchups, I may play Ashawn Robinson over Zach Allen in my defensive tackle required league this week.
I don't blame you there. It feels like Robinson's got a higher floor right now than Allen, especially with him not getting the sacks. But I mean, Cooper, Benito, even Ellis. I mean, these guys are just having a great season so far. This line or the outside edges for sure.
Now we talked about it earlier how sometimes when these linebackers clean up a lot of the tackles, that it doesn't leave much for the safeties. Well, Singleton picked up 11, Sterner picked up 3. The only Bengals only played 48 snaps, as we talked about. So that meant Hufanga only had 1 tackle. Brandon Jones had only 3 tackles. My oldest son, the one that's about to have the baby, well, his wife's about to have the baby, but
He's already had
um,
it.
yeah, he was watching the game last night, and he was so frustrated that Hufanga only had 1 freaking tackle, and he was so aggravated with the Bengals offense. He was because Jake Browning sucks. He can't get anything downfield to help with tackles for these guys, and he ended up losing his game by like a point and a half because Hufanga did
Oh,
basically nothing for him. So anyway, I digress. But shout out to my son who is probably going to be listening to this recording.
I'm guessing the
Moving
grandson isn't going to be named Talanoa after this game, huh?
or Jake, as in Jake Browning.
Or Jake, right?
Um,
Fair enough.
all right, let's continue with the AFC West here and move to the Chiefs, who had 54 snaps against the Ravens, and we talked about how badly the Ravens played and how bad their defense was and so forth. So we've been through that, but let's talk about the Chiefs side of things. With only 54 snaps, and Nick Bolton did play 94% of the snaps. Now there was a little bit garbage time where he sat out, but he had only 6 tackles, 3 solo, and a quarterback hit. Now, we were starting to get excited because Bolton was starting to give us a little bit more. We talked about it last week, and we even talked about, do we think this continued? And we were hoping, because we're starting to see a trend. But Shawn, we didn't see that trend from him. Tranquil only played 85% of the snaps, but yet had 7 tackles. Bummer on Nick Bolton, Shawn, or it's like, Ricky, it was only 54 snaps. Relax, man. He'll get back up to 8 or 9.
Yeah, the linebackers against Baltimore have struggled just because of the way they run their offense. So I'm not sweating Bolton just yet. I still think he can build and still be a pretty good linebacker this year. We've seen him have some good games. He did get a hit, so I'm not giving up just yet. I'm still thinking he sneaks in there with the top 24 guys.
All right, so moving to the edge, George Karlaftis, after that 10 tackle week the week before, came down to earth a little bit with only 2 tackles, but 4 quarterback hits and a sack. Shawn, we still think of him as a number 2 edge, correct?
Absolutely, I'm drinking the Kool Aid on Carl Laftis. He's having a fantastic season. 3 sacks now. Um, yeah, the Big Ten tackle game we knew wasn't repeatable. It's good to see him to get another sack though, and that's 9 quarterback hits the last 2 weeks. That's fantastic. So that means he's getting
Yeah.
there, guys.
Yeah. So moving to defensive tackle, only Chris Jones played more than 50% of the snaps there. He played 70%, but once again, only 1 tackle. And he did have 2 quarterback hits, and he did get a pass defense, which is more than he had typically been doing. He did get a sack in week 3, but boy, he's great. He's great for the Chiefs when you watch him on the field. You see him collapse in the pocket, and 2, sometimes 3 people trying to block him and stuff, which frees up folks like Karlaftis. But boy, I tell you what, it's hard to play him right now, folks. So don't. It is a name, but don't feel obligated to play him. As a side note, George Karlaftis haircut, man, he's got to do something with that. Okay, moving to the safety position. I don't know what made that come up. Chamari Connor, 100% of the snaps. Once again, only 54 snaps. He got 6 tackles, tied for second on the team with Bolton in terms of total tackles for this game. Played another wonderful 80% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. We still love us some Chamari Connor here. Jaden Hicks played 52% of the snaps, had 4 tackles. He did play 75% close to the line of scrimmage. But once again, I keep on bringing him up because I just want him to be such a thing so badly, but he's just not getting there yet for us. Okay. That's all we got on the Chiefs. Let's move to the Raiders, who played 68 snaps against the Bears. Devin White played 100% of the snaps and led the team with tackles with 9. He also had a pass defense, including one of those 9 tackles being tackled for loss. Jermaine Pratt played 88% of the snaps, which would be fantastic if he was playing a typical off the ball linebacker position. But he only had 5 tackles. He did get a tackle for loss, but he played 28% of the snaps on the defensive line. Shawn, we've been preaching and talking about Jermaine Pratt. Nothing's changed in our thoughts about sell him if you can. Don't rely on him. Try and find something else.
Yeah, he's just not getting the production we need. You look at a guy like Derek Barnes doing something similar in Detroit, but he's getting a couple more tackles a game, plus the rushes and whatnot. So he's the outlier of this group of similar type players here. So yeah, if you can get something out of Pratt, take it. If not, I'm really not starting him if I can avoid it. Even in super deep leagues, I'm not starting him.
Continuing in the linebacker position, Jamal Adams, who had been playing roughly, let's just call it 26 to 33% of the snaps first 3 weeks. But we talked about how in many leagues he's now have a linebacker designation, but in others he has a safety designation. But he's been playing primarily a linebacker role. And we talked about the fact that while he hadn't been playing much, he's certainly been flashing when he's on the field. Well, this week, major change in playing time. He jumped all the way up to 54%. Landon Roberts fell all the way to 19%. Jamal Adams, granted, not playable at 54%, but another person that boy, the way he's playing and the way, and if they're using him the way he did in Seattle that year when he had like, I believe it was like 8.5 or 9 sacks kind of thing and a bunch of tackles when he was a safety, started playing that box linebacker role. If he can stay healthy and productive and he gets that opportunity, a little bit more opportunity in a deep league, someone we'd be interested in, Shawn, but not yet.
Definitely have an eye on him. And again, if you just have the room on the bench, he's not a bad pickup. Hard to trust, hard to start just yet, but I mean his numbers are slowly trending up, and if they clearly see it. I mean he's flashing when he's on the field. I could see him working up to 70% here soon.
Exactly. So definitely keep your eye on him. At the edge position, Max Crosby was a freaking beast. He made Caleb Williams' life freaking miserable after Williams had looked so good the week before, not so good this week. So Crosby played his usual 97% of the snaps with 5 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, and not to mention 3 passes defensed, and an interception. Other than that, he didn't do anything. Okay, he didn't get a sack. All right. So we'll kind of excuse him for that right now. But holy cow, he is a freaking monster. For those people that lost Nick Bosa and you're competing for a championship, you have that kind of team. I'm willing to trade a late first to get Max Crosby on my team, even as he's starting to get near 30, to to help bolster my lineup in Bosa's absence.
Yeah, high motor that has not slowed down at all. Uh, Even with I believe it was an ankle injury last year. We were worried
Yep,
about that maybe hampering him some this year, and you can never tell it. I mean, this dude is wide open from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. Just a fantastic player, and yeah, if you can get him, yeah, get him, even for a first round pick.
yep. He did have a high ankle sprain, but I want me some Max Crosby. Malcolm Kuntz finally bumped up a little bit, bumped up to 56% in terms of snap percentage, which is good. We like to see that. We were high on Kuntz coming into the year. He hasn't delivered so far, but maybe that playing time continues to bump up. Another one to keep an eye on. He did have 3 tackles in this game, which was great. Moving to the secondary, Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Polamalu both played 100% of the snaps. Chin was second on the team with tackles with 7, although only 3 were solo. He did play 40% of the snaps in the closer line of scrimmage, but he played a little bit more deep. He did play 60% deep in this game, which didn't like seeing that quite as much, but would prefer to see him more 50% closer line of scrimmage, but still gave us 7 tackles this past week. At cornerback, Eric Stokes got hurt with a knee injury, did not go back into the game. Darian Porter was the one that replaced him. Darnay Holmes was their slot cornerback, as an FYI. The only reason I bring it up, we do like to talk about different injuries to make sure people are aware for the deepest of leagues. But Darian Porter could be someone who gets targeted quite a bit when he's on the field because he is a rookie. He's a converted wide receiver, didn't play much cornerback in college. They like his potential, but he could be someone who gets a lot of targets and gets a lot of tackles as a result. You're Jalen Jones from the Colts of last year, basically. All right, moving to the Los Angeles Chargers, who shockingly played 76 snaps against the Giants. I still couldn't get over that game. But that shows how important offensive tackles are. You lose one all pro tackle, but then you lose another all pro tackle, and all of a sudden your quarterback is under duress a lot, particularly when you have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter. Those 3 alone, I'm jumping ahead to the Giants, but I'll mention it now. Those 3 alone had 12 quarterback hits.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Exactly right. So we'll come back to the Giants a little bit later. So back to the Chargers, though. Deion Henley played all 100% of the snaps, got 9 tackles, continued to see a very nice floor. Troy Dye played 86% of the snaps, 13 tackles. Now, only 3 were solo. He did get a quarterback hit, but that's a much higher snap count than we've seen from Troy Dye, Shawn. And that's a heck of a lot more tackles than we typically see. Do you think this is because, particularly when Neighbors was out of the game, they elected to go ahead and keep that second linebacker on the field more, with Dart also being a running back and maybe using Dye as a little bit of a spy as part of this? Do you think that's what was kind of going on?
Yeah, with Jackson Dart being in there, being a lot more mobile than say Russell Wilson was going to be. Yeah, this feels more game script. I actually feel like he's going to probably drop back down next week to where he has been in that probably 60s range. Maybe sneaks into the 70s, but I expect him to drop back down going forward.
All right. So now moving to the edge position for the Chargers, do you know who's tied for the sixth in the league in sacks with four?
And he did it all in one game.
That is correct. Tuli Tuipulotu had a monster edge game. He had like the George Karlaftis game of last week with 10 tackles, seven of which were solo, five tackles for loss, five quarterback hits, four sacks, and a forced fumble. And in our Kings Classic League, someone dropped him like the day before the game, giving up on him because they were so frustrated.
Right.
So he had a monster game. If you played him, congratulations on your victory, because I'm sure he probably
I
led you
I
to it.
seen only one person play him in all the leagues I'm in, and actually started him, and that was shout out to the IDP Godfather Gary Davenport, where I think he like smashed 65, maybe 70 points. Crazy week scoring. So as the only one I know that was bold enough to throw him in or desperate enough, I didn't look into his roster too deep.
So, Sean, last week Karlaftis had 10 tackles and several sacks and hits and so forth, and they came down to earth with two. Are we expecting the same thing for Thule this coming week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
just who's playing the Giants next week. That's who I'm targeting. Both these games were against the
That would
Giants.
be the New Orleans Saints
All right. Well, there you
and
go.
Carl
Confirmed.
Granderson.
Confirmed. Carl Grandison probably probably just 9 tackles and probably just 3.5 sacks. But yeah, he should do all right.
All right, we're running with Carl Granderson for next week, folks, and don't expect a repeat of this. So don't go crazy on your fab dollars. Now, if you need an edge person, okay, make a reasonable bid, but don't think you're going to get, depending on your scoring system, anywhere from 60 to 80 points every week out of two. It's
Yeah,
not going to happen.
those were his first 4 sacks of the season, so he hasn't done much outside of that. I don't even think his tackles have been that high. So yeah, huge outlier game.
All right. So, but boy, this is where we learn stuff about playing against the Tennessee Titans right tackle, the New York Giants offensive line, etc. Now, Jackson Dart, too, this was his first game starting as well. And so that certainly contributed in addition to the Giants offensive line. So you have a rookie quarterback starting his first game. At defensive tackle, I just want to quickly call out Deshaun Hand. Seems like every week he, as a defensive tackle, he's getting three, four. This week he had five tackles and all. I didn't go back and research it, but in the deepest of leagues, someone just to keep an eye on for like if you're desperate in a bye week as a side note. Now, going back to our favorite safety in the world, Derwin James, he's tied for second among defensive backs and tackles with 34. Y'all gonna be real interested to hear when we get to who has the most tackles from a defensive back perspective a little bit later in the show. But once again, eight tackles, quarterback hit, half a sack, another phenomenal game, 100% of snaps. What was interesting in the safety position, though, and we cautioned folks about this, that Elijah Moden could be coming back from injury. I can't remember if we did that on Start Sit Show or this show last week. And as a result, it was going to impact Tony Jefferson's stats, who some people, he was performing well, and some people in deep leagues might have been tempted to play him. But what happened, it became this Aloy Gilman, Tony Jefferson, Elijah Moden. Is cluster okay word to say? With Gilman playing only 67% of snaps when he was playing 100%, Jefferson playing 54, and Moden playing 51. Sean, what are we doing with the second safety position?
We are staying away from that. You can't trust that. Similar to the Steelers' second safety spot, you're staying away from it. You play Derwin without question every week, and even if you're truly desperate, they're all playing deep. None of them are playing as close to the line as Derwin. So you really can't trust it. I'm staying away from them. All of them.
Agreed. Now, Tarheeb, still a cornerback, continues to be their primary slot cornerback, playing 100% of the snaps. But boy, he is just not outside of one game. He is just not delivering the stats, which is surprising and disappointing, Shawn. And I actually have a league where I'm giving up on him and I'm dropping him for a different cornerback.
I've already dropped him, but yeah, it's what we expect him to produce, like Andrew Phillips has for the Giants. That type of season is what we were looking for, and it has just not happened. So yeah, I'm fine with anybody wanting to move off a cornerback who's not producing.
All right, moving to the NFC and moving to the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys, who played 83 snaps in this overtime game against the Packers, which ended up in a tie, which I've heard people say a tie is like kissing your sister. I don't have a sister, so I wouldn't kiss her anyway, but that's what people say about ties. But I digress significantly there. Once again, linebacker position, though, very interesting. Kenneth Murray played 94% of the snaps, but only had 8 tackles, only 4 which were solo, and nothing else. That is Kenneth Murray for you folks. Okay. Jack Sanborn only played 63% of the snaps, but he led the team with 11 tackles. Now, 63% of the snaps when you play 83 is still 52 snaps. Still not a full game, but 11 tackles on 52 snaps is pretty dang good. But he's just a guy, I guess. As the Cowboys are looking at things, Damone Clark was completely inactive. Maris Lufau played 35% of the snaps. Shamar James played 31% of the snaps. So this was Shamar James' first real action on defense as well during this game. Lufau had a really bad, stupid penalty as well during the game. I don't know if that cost him, but he had 1 tackle. Shamar James had 5, only one of which was solo. He also, Shamar James looked a little bit on the smaller side. Looks like someone who needs to beef up, but had good speed. But right now, what are we doing with the Cowboys linebacker situation, Shawn? Are you willing to? I guess we play Murray, but not feeling very great about it. But what do we do with Sanborn? Because they're not going to play 83 snaps every week.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like Sanborn's actually the better start, even with the getting less snaps. He seems to be outproducing or right there with Kenneth Murray every week. I want to say he's been outproducing every week here too, but they're nothing to get excited about, either one of them. Insane production by Sanborn, but again, he's just the thumper here. He's not trusted in passing down. So if you do play him, you're not getting a full set of snaps here. You're only going to get 60, 70% of the snaps. But if he can produce like he has, I mean, he kind of makes up for it. So I would start Sanborn over Murray, even with the playing time, because I want the production.
All right. Moving to the edge position, we talked about this a little bit last week, and only Sam Williams that played more than 50% of snaps on the edge. This week, not a single one played over 50% of the snaps on the edge. And Sam Williams actually fell to third with only 35% of snaps. Remember when he was the thing and everybody jumped on him after week 1 as well? We spent a lot of $5 on that. But Donovan Izaruku, the rookie from Boston College, had 5 tackles, including a tackle for loss on 48% of the snaps. He played the most snaps. Jadeveon Clowney only played 28% of the snaps, but did have 3 tackles in a limited time. I expect his playing time to go up, but still expect, as we talked about last week, for this to be a complete rotational mess. So James Houston, you're going to see that he got another sack, but he only had 2 tackles in total and played the least amount at 27% of the snaps. So he's playing in very obvious passing situations, and that's about it. And you can't trust that production for James Houston. Now, someone on the podcast, not named Ricky, that would be Shawn, in other words, placed
Whoa.
a that a rumor has it that he may have placed a bet that Kenny Clark would get a revenge game sack. Unfortunately, I think he may have lost his money on that one. Luckily, I understand he didn't spend much on that. Osa, Osa, Dig- Osa Digazua did have a great game at 64% of the snaps, though, with 6 tackles, including 2 quarterback hits. He's a number two defensive tackle, folks, and as we're starting to get in bye week, someone that you could probably play in that kind of role. At the safety position, Malik Hooker hurt his toe. It's kind of funny. You hear these big football players hurting a toe, and he's being carried off with the help of two people, not putting on the weight of his foot. You think it's his knee and his toe. Still, it's extremely painful and something they just can't really play with when it's hurting. As a result, Wanye Thomas took his snaps. You and I were both high on Wanye Thomas going into the season. That's because we thought he was going to play more Donovan Wilson's box role, but unfortunately, he played Hooker's deep role, where he played 75% of the snaps deep. So if y'all listened to us previously and heard us talking and singing praises of Wanye Thomas, unfortunately, he didn't get the utilization like we were hoping. So don't go chasing him, right?
Not yet. Not yet. Not his year. Well, we're still hoping for next year. Dynasty stash. That's what we'll go with.
All right, that sounds good. Reddy Stewart is, by the way, playing the slot cornerback role for the Cowboys. It's the second week in a row. He had 6 tackles. So it wasn't Deron Bland that played significant in that role. Deron Bland played much more on the outside than on the inside. Reddy Stewart is the person. And considering he was someone they picked up off of waivers, they seem to be pretty pleased with his play right now. Moving to the Giants, who we were talking about a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Chargers, they only played, excuse me, I shouldn't say they played about an average 63 snaps. Bobby Okereke, who was leading the league in tackles after week 3, is now tied for 7th in the league at tackles at 38 because he only put up 4 tackles on those 63 snaps. What was interesting about Okereke is when the Giants were playing a heck of a lot more snaps, that certainly was helping to increase his tackle count. But on such a small number of snaps played, his tackles were way down. Darius Muasau played the number 2 linebacker role, at least mostly. He played 49% of snaps and led the team in tackles with a whopping 6, but only 2 of which were solo. Demetrius Flanagan-Files also got in there for 24% of snaps. We're not interested in him right now. Boy, Okereke, we were really hard on him preseason, early in the year. We were starting to get on the bandwagon last week, and then kind of pulls the rug out from under us this week, Shawn.
Yeah, typical Bobby O. I, I don't have
He
any
is who he
shares of
is
him.
now.
Yeah, I didn't pick any up because I really didn't expect him to be on the team still. Back before everybody got hurt, but
And
yeah,
if Dart can make their offense a little bit more effective, even without Neighbors, and can maybe move the chains a little bit more with his running capabilities and being a little bit more accurate in the shorter intermediate game than Russell is, excuse me, than Russell Wilson was, maybe the Giants do play less snaps, which would certainly not help Okereke. If you got him, now's the time to try and trade him, folks. You can use that stat I gave. Look, he's tied for 7th in the league in tackles.
yes,
Use that
some
stat.
somebody's probably got some linebackers on a bye week. This would be a good time to move him.
Exactly right. Now, in terms of sacks, tied for first in the league in sacks with 5 is Mr. Brian Burns, who once again had an uber great game with 81% of the snaps, 5 tackles, 4 quarterback hits to go along with the sack. Kayvon Thibodeau, 2 tackles and a sack at 78%. Abdul Carter, 73%. Didn't get a sack, but actually had 5 quarterback hits. I feel bad for Spencer Rattler coming up this week. That's all I'm going to say on that.
He's going to get sacked more than Herbert did, for sure.
I think you are correct. Abdul Carter played 91% of the snaps on the defensive line. He only played 4 snaps in the box. So it wasn't as if he was taking that away from Muasau in any type of significance whatsoever. And boy, if this pass rush keeps it up. Now, the Chargers, as we talked about, lost 2 offensive tackles from the beginning of the year, 2 all pros. So we do want to be careful, but Brian Burns is someone looking really, really good, folks. Dexter Lawrence, Only one tackle did have the interception. The week before, he did have that elbow problem, which still worried about. He played 71% of the snaps. So the big news at safety, Jevon Holland left the game with a neck injury. And even with that, he played 76% of the snaps deep. The good news is Tyler Newman moved a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, not a heck of a lot more, but he was up to 42% playing close to the line of scrimmage. So a little bit progress there. But Dane Belton is the safety that came in lieu of Jevon Holland. He had been playing that third safety role when they went with three safeties. Now he was the number two safety. Shawn, Dane Belton had some productivity last year when the Giants had some other injuries at safety. If Holland's out, could you see Belton as a number two safety?
Yeah, because I assume he'll be the one playing up in the box where Dubin will have to start playing deep again. Or that's what the indications from previous weeks have shown us. And we've seen Dane Belton produce in those games previously last year and also. I don't know. Safety two, definitely a three.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a high end three for him. Yeah. All right. Then last things at cornerback, real quick, folks. Drew Phillips played 76% of the snaps. The primary slot cornerback only had two tackles, unfortunately, but he did have four pass defenses and an interception. So they were also picking on him to a certain degree as well. But he gave us the numbers, which was fantastic. Moving to the Philadelphia Eagles, who played 72 snaps against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Zach Bond played 100% of the snaps and led the team with eight tackles, including a sack, which is fantastic. Jahad Campbell played 97% of the snaps, but only had four tackles. He did get an interception, which was great, but he played 26% of the snaps on the D line. It was also reported today on Tuesday, September 30th, that Nakobe Dean is nearing a practice return either this week or next week, according to defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. You know how many quarterback hits the Eagles had this week? Dose. They actually had two. Ojimo had one, and then the Bond sack had one. So those were the two quarterback hits that they had this week. Campbell's going to end up on the edge when Dean comes back, is my gut feeling, folks. Shawn, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, they've lost Nolan Smith. They just lost Ogbo Okoronkwo. So Darius Smith isn't doing anything. Alex Hunt isn't really doing anything. They need some kind of pass rush. I'm with you. I assume Jacoby Dean comes back sooner than later, takes over in the middle, and Campbell gets thrown on the edge. That's looking very real right now.
Yeah, and that was our concern early in the year. But and then we thought also there was a Trotter Campbell rotation potentially. The good news is that Campbell just beat out Trotter, so he was playing almost 100% of the snaps. Not as productive as we like, but at least he was on the field, and there was hope for growth. But with this news about Nakobe Dean coming back much sooner than we expected, we think this is really bad news for Campbell. So particularly in redraft leagues, dynasty is a little bit different, but redraft leagues, man, get off of that horse as quick as you can. See if you can find someone to take him, folks. Shawn basically talked about the defensive ends that they did nothing. And basically, so we'll move on. Moving to the defensive tackle spot, Moro Ojimo played 67% of the snaps. We were high on him coming to the year. He did have a sack, which was great. He also had a pass defense, but he's been pretty much all or nothing. He's never had more than two tackles in any one game, and and he's had sacks in every other game. Hard to rely on that. Someone I'm still keeping my eye on for upside, but someone I'm definitely not playing right now. Now, Shawn, you mentioned that you heard that Jalen Carter had a little bit of a shoulder issue because he does usually play about 80 something percent of snaps, and he was down at 68% this week. What have you heard about the shoulder injury?
They were still looking into it, but they're expecting probably not this week for him to play. I believe this is a re-injury of something he had during the off season, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was banged up or something then, but they made it sound like it was a re-injury and not just something new. So, depending on the severity of that, we may see him miss a little time here too, which I don't think he finished the game this weekend. So, it was later in the game he got hurt, but still, he's a big part of that defense. We've seen what Dallas was able to do with Javonte Williams without him in there. So,
Right.
big run
So
stuffer.
now, from a fantasy football perspective, he hasn't been giving us a lot of stats. And with
Sure.
this injury on top of that, depending on your lineups and your roster capabilities, so forth, someone at this point, I think we can move on from Sean.
Yeah. Yeah. Even defensive tackle required leagues, you're not getting enough out of him. But he may affect some of these other guys inadvertently. We actually see more tackles for some of these guys, actually,
That it
up the
might help
middle.
from that regard. Some of our
Yeah.
linebackers, and that is a great point. At safety, Andrew Makuba, the second rounder out of Texas, finally played 100% of the snaps, and he had 6 tackles, including a tackle for loss. The bad news, as a Vic Fangio defense often does, he played 71% deep, as Blankenship did 81% deep. They also played, remember, 72 snaps. So that means that he was on the field more than normal average. So that translates to potentially like maybe 5 tackles or so in a normal game. Uh, People are going to get excited about Makuba, but right now, hard to play him with those numbers, Sean.
Yeah, it's really deceptive how much he's playing deep and how lucky he is to get those 6 tackles.
Yep. And Cooper DeJean actually led the team in tackles with 9. We told you at 100%. We told you since week 1 at 100% of the snaps with his utilization, which is 82% close to line of scrimmage, the stats would come, and they certainly came this week with eight of those 9 tackles being solo, including 2 pass defenses as well. Great week for Cooper DeJean. Moving on to Washington, whose defense absolutely looked horrendous against the Falcons. Now, think about this. The Panthers basically shut out the Falcons the week before, and then the Falcons destroyed the Commanders. What does that say about the Commanders' defense? Not a whole lot of good. But Washington played 65 snaps against Atlanta. Bobby Wagner, 10 tackles, only 4 which were solo. He is tied for second in the league in tackles, though, with 42. So the old man continues to produce the tackles, which is great. But boy, this defense. Ugh. Now we had a Frankie Louvu sighting. The once every 3 to 4 weeks game that he has. He had it this past week. I bet you a bunch of people had him on the bench because of frustration and missed out on it. So they'll put him in next week and he would disappoint. But this week he had 8 tackles, including he got that sack. 5 of those tackles were solo. So that's a Frankie Louvu week, Sean. But ooh, he's like these big play wide receivers, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like JMO for the Lions, boomer bust.
Yep. And so I guarantee you there'll be some people that play him this week that will regret playing him when he reverts back to 2 tackles and no sacks. Moving to the defensive line, Dorrance Armstrong, who we got some questions about during the start sit show, we said we expected him to have a solid line and against the Falcons in that offensive line that maybe he could pull off a sack. Unfortunately, he didn't get a sack. We did recommend somebody else over him. I can't remember who it was. But he did come up with 4 tackles and a tackle for loss and a quarterback hit. So he's putting these kind of floor numbers together every week with an occasional sack. I think he has 3 sacks in total for the year. So um, a defensive edge 2, but not quite a 1 yet at this point, folks. I shouldn't say not quite, not a 1 yet, period, number 2. Moving to the secondary, Jeremy Reeves was the safety that ended up playing in the Will Harris role. Of course, Will Harris went on injured reserve after he got hurt in that week 3 game. Reeves only played 89% of the snaps, tied for second in the league, second on the team in tackles with 8, 4 of which were solo. And he played 67% of the snaps in the slot. Now, Darnell Savage did play 14% of the snaps. And while I'm not a Savage fan, Sean, are you comfortable that Reeves is going to be in the starting lineup the next time Washington plays? Or do you think it's going to be Savage, or you think we're going to have a rotation here? I'm not confident that Reeves is going to maintain this role.
So you're seeing more of a rotation. I don't trust Savage either. Is the problem here? So more than likely, I'm not going to start either one of these guys. I don't think I was able to pick up Reeves anywhere. I thought about playing in this game. If I did, I will be probably flipping him for somebody else this week. So that's where we're both off Reeves and Savage right now. So
Right. And if you think about Will Harris's production, where he was getting about, let's just call it 5 tackles a game,
yeah,
4.5, 5 tackles a game, Darnell Savage could do that if he plays.
two, three tackles. Yeah.
All right. Well, if Savage ends up playing 80 or 90%, we'll have to revisit that one, Sean. Okay. Moving to the NFC North, and the Chicago Bears only played 52 snaps against the Raiders. So, very, very low number of snaps. Noah Sewell and Tremaine Edmonds both played over 90%, but Tremaine Edmonds, another fantastic game out of Tremaine Edmonds with 11 tackles, 6 of which were solo. Tremaine Edmonds, I don't know if people realize it, but he's now tied for fifth in the league in tackles with 40, having a really good season, probably the best since his rookie year with Buffalo. Sean, are we we've been calling him like a high end four, low end three, you know, for the past couple of years, and early this year, that's how we felt. Are we willing to kind of bump him up and say we're confident that he's going to be a linebacker two for the rest of the year?
The way he's going, yeah. Um, he's definitely making me change my mind here. Was he calling plays this week, or do you know? Was he
I'm
the
sorry.
green dot? Was he the green dot this week, or was it Noah Sewell again?
I'm almost certain it was Sewell, but I'm not 100% on that.
That's what I was thinking too. So maybe not having that green dot responsibility is just let him run around and make plays. This is quite the renaissance here.
But
I'm
it
firing
also,
him up because there's a lot of higher ranked linebackers that are on their way down. Logan Wilson, Bobby Okereke, Tremaine Edmonds is going up. So yeah, I'm playing him over those guys.
playing him over Foye, Aluakon.
Yeah,
Yep. So I'm in on that now. Noah Sewell had a disappointing only 5 tackles. He did get a tackle for loss and a forced fumble, which kind of helped his stat line. But after he had been the other 2 weeks that he had been playing in Edwards' position was much more productive. But once again, it was only on 52 snaps in fairness, and Edmonds was certainly cleaning things up. TJ Edwards, no word yet if he's going to come back. If Edwards is back, folks, Sewell goes back to the bench. Don't lose sight of that. Okay. But Edwards really didn't practice last week, so there could be one more week here for Sewell that you could take advantage of. The only other thing I'll mention with Edmonds and Sewell, then I'll let you comment as well, Sean, is that this is where a defensive coordinator system can make a difference. And this Dennis Allen, more of a zone system that he plays with linebackers and keeping stuff in front of him versus a little bit more of the man to man that, well, see, Eberflus played a decent amount of zone as well. So I got to take that back here. So never mind, Sean. Go ahead.
I do wonder if Edwards does come back, will he take the green dot or will it go back to Tremaine? So if Tremaine Edmonds does get the green dot back, it may hurt him again. We may see his tackles drop again. So something else to look out for.
Okay, on the edge for the Bears, boy, not a lot to talk about. Sweat had 3 tackles and 73%. Odeyingbo played 77%, got 1 tackle. Once again, only 52 snaps. Going to the secondary, the good news is Jaquan Brisker played 73% of the snaps close to line of scrimmage. The bad news is his productivity with only 4 tackles, only one of which was solo. He did get a quarterback hit, but Brisker is certainly letting us down this year, Sean. I don't know if it's because of the concussion from last year and he's playing more cautiously or what, but he is just not giving us the numbers we're used to from him.
And it could be the fact that Tremaine Edmonds has really went off the last few weeks. So where tackles were making it to Brisker, he's cleaning them up right now. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I'm with you. It's disappointing either way. If
We're
you got a
not
better,
dumping him yet.
not dumping, but if you got a better option, you're starting him over Brisker for sure. I'm benching him.
Yep, definitely benching him. Now, Kevin Byard played 79% of the snaps deep, and that helped him to get those 2 interceptions that he got. And he's doing phenomenal with interceptions. He may end up leading the league in interceptions before it's over with. And he came up with 7 tackles, including a tackle for loss. So even though he's playing that deep role, he's making the productivity happen, whereas Brisker's not. So this is really interesting and all. The last thing I want to talk about the Bears, Nick McLeod, who has been playing the slot cornerback position. If you've been using him in the deepest of leagues and hoping that this Dennis Allen system would cause him to be uber productive, well, Kyler Gordon is expected back this coming week. So bye bye, Nick McLeod. Hello, Kyler Gordon. Moving on to the Lions, who played 67 snaps versus the Browns. Jack Campbell played 100% and had 11 tackles. Alex Anzalone played 100% and had 6 tackles, but he also got a sack and a pass defense, which certainly helped his output for this week. You brought up Derek Barnes earlier, playing on that edge role, playing 91% of the snaps. He did have 7 tackles once again this week, only 2 of which were solo, but a quarterback hit. If you had your choice between Derek Barnes and Jermaine Pratt, which one are you taking?
Right now I'm taking Derek Barnes. He's steadily giving me 6, 7 tackles a game, sack upside. Where Pratt can get some of the tackles, I don't think he's came anywhere close to a sack.
That is correct. Not even close. So at least from what I've seen in the games. Now moving to the edge position, I must admit I was a little bit nervous after week 1 with Aiden Hutchinson, and there was all this talk about, you know, people trying to block his legs and Lions complaining, but it was all legitimate blocks and all that kind of stuff. But boy, I am sure glad he turned things around. He had 4 tackles this week, 4 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, a forced fumble. He actually had another sack forced fumble that was taken away by a defensive secondary penalty. He's now up to tied for 6th in the league in sacks with 4. So Hutchinson is chugging along. Choo choo, baby. Keep on going with that. Remember when Al Qadim Muhammad was a thing last week, Shawn?
Hopefully, we told everybody not to chase that.
I believe we did tell him not to chase it, Shawn, and he played only 37% of the snaps. Now, granted, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, and we talked about that. Coming out of the last game, he had a goose egg from a stat perspective. Zilch, nada, nothing, 0. So we warned folks. Hopefully, they didn't chase it, and we move on from Al Qadim Muhammad. Moving to the secondary at safety, Kirby Joseph only played 75% of the snaps. He left the game injured. Avante Maddox picked up the snaps that he did not play. Shawn, have you heard anything yet today on Kirby Joseph's injury? I believe it was knee related, but I haven't heard anything else.
No, I haven't heard anything on that. Actually, it's been awful quiet on what a lot of these are today, which is a bit worrisome. If it was something that wasn't a big deal, they'd be like, he's fine. He's going to practice. A lot of them are being quiet, so maybe he's out for this week. That's just a guess. We got to keep an eye on that. If you're starting Kirby Joseph, you were only looking for those interceptions anyway, as he is not reliable on the tackles.
Correct. And boy, he got another lame duck throw from Joe Flacco for one of the easiest interceptions in the world that I could have made. And I remember saying, what is Flacco doing as I was watching the game? So anyway, Kirby Joseph, folks, we talked about the fact we don't expect him to repeat in the top 24 because we don't expect him to get the number of interceptions he got last year. He does have 2 already. Just don't think he'll get as much as he had last year. Now we got some injury concerns here. DJ Reed has a hamstring issue. Injured reserve is the most likely scenario here, not for the full season, but most likely will miss some time. Terrion Arnold hurt his shoulder, not expected to be long term, but could miss this coming week. So we could be talking about Rock Yassin, Amik Robertson, and Avante Maddox, along with Brian Branch in the secondary. The other concern is that when Kirby Joseph missed some time, Brian Branch did move to that deep secondary position. So if Kirby Joseph is out, Brian Branch is at risk of not producing if they use him in that deep safety position as they did in the previous game when Kirby Joseph missed some time. So something to be careful of. Shawn, I'd still play him, but I might have to keep my expectations in check.
Yeah, you got to start him just because of his big playability as well. Usually a pretty solid tackle floor. I can't bitch him even if he does play deep.
Right. Moving on to the Packers, who played at a very nice 69 snaps against the Cowboys. Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker both played 100% of the snaps. Quay Walker, once again, with another big week with 11 tackles, including a tackle for loss. Edgerrin Cooper played second fiddle once again this week with 7 tackles, which was tied for third on the team this week, and one pass defense. Now, Cooper's not blitzing nearly as much as he was last year, and so he's not attacking line of scrimmage as much, and it's not creating the opportunities for those big plays we're getting from him last year, Shawn. While he's playing 100% of the snaps, I'm getting very concerned that my prediction of him being a top 5 linebacker is not going to come to fruition because of how he's being utilized, in particular with Michael Parsons and the way Rashawn Gary has been rushing the passer. They haven't had as much of a need.
That's true. The big problem here is how high people were drafting Cooper. We all expect him to do really well this year, but it's like everybody completely forgot Quay Walker. And so everybody that got Quay Walker got a huge discount on the guy who was in contract year. He was fifth year option, I don't believe, was picked up by the Packers. So
It was not picked up, so he certainly has the incentive, and he's playing like it.
yeah, so that was everybody overreaching a bit on that, and we're just not getting the production we had hoped. Uh, but had we flipped those draft picks, it would follow the line. It would be right where we wanted to be. So a little disappointing. Still early in the season.
Yep.
Not going to panic just yet.
All right. And Quay Walker, as a side note, is tied for second in the league in tackles with 42. Now, going to the edge position for the Packers, do you know who's tied for third in the league in sacks with 4.5?
I imagine it's Gary. He was
It is
first.
Rashawn Gary. It is not Micah Parsons. That is absolutely correct. Now, Rashawn Gary did not have a sack against Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Dak Prescott played a phenomenal game, by the way. Micah Parsons got credited for a sack. And yes,
Mm,
you do get credit for a sack if the quarterback went back to pass and he scrambles out and he gets tackled right at the line of scrimmage. At the line of scrimmage is considered a sack, so Micah Parsons officially got a sack in that one. He did have 3 quarterback hits as well, but he didn't get the kind of sack he wanted on Dak. And as we joked about, I believe it was during the Start Sit show, that Jerry Jones and Schottenheimer were doing everything they could to make sure Parsons did not get a sack. I think they would have rather lost the game than have Parsons get a sack.
I think you're right. Absolutely. Well done by the Cowboys offensive line, because we really were expecting them to get eaten up here, and not necessarily by Parsons, but we were expecting Rashawn Gary to put up some big numbers this past weekend, and they held him in check. So kudos
He
to
did get
those
four
guys.
four tackles, but he did not add to his sack total. That is true.
No hits or
And so
anything.
exactly. So moving to defensive tackle, unfortunately, Devontae Wyatt left with a knee injury. He did not return. He only played 19% of the snaps. He was off to a fairly good start to the year, particularly for defensive tackle required leagues. That's a loss there. So watch the injury reports, but it didn't look good. Expect him to miss some time here, folks. At the safety position, McKinney and Evan Williams both played 100%. Both of them, interestingly enough, played in the 50s in terms of from a deep perspective, with McKinney only playing 51% deep, Evan Williams playing 59% deep. And with that, Evan Williams actually was second on the team in tackles with 10, 5 of which were solo. Javon Bullard was the primary slot cornerback, was the slot cornerback, basically. Let me rephrase that. With 65% of the snaps played in total, but 98% of those snaps he played as the slot cornerback or in the box. Nate Hobbs, one thing that it's almost getting to Marcus Davenport proportions in terms of Nate Hobbs and injuries. He played 67% of the snaps and went out with an injury. And Carrington Valentine ended up replacing him. Keyshawn Nixon played 94% of his snaps out wide. So right now, it's starting to finally crystallize It's Hobbs slash Valentine on one corner, Keyshawn Nixon on the other outside corner, Buller in the slot, McKinney and Williams are your safeties. That's how this thing is materializing, folks. Okay, moving on to the Minnesota Vikings now. If I could get my mouse working. And at the linebacker position, the Minnesota Vikings only played 53 snaps against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Eric Wilson, 100% of the snaps, 9 tackles. Ivan Pace only played 77% this week, down from the previous week, and we were wondering if that would sustain, and it did not. So he only played 77% of snaps, 7 tackles, only 2 of which were solo. At the edge, Andrew Van Ginkel, who we joked last week how he only played 8 snaps but had 2 sacks, which was fantastic, ended up not playing in this game again. And there's a high probability he doesn't play this coming week either. Dallas Turner played 100% of snaps. Now, with that, he only had 4 tackles and 1 solo, didn't do anything with quarterback hits or sacks, etc. But 100% of the snaps with his skill set, something to keep an eye on with bye weeks. Maybe there's someone in deeper systems from an edge perspective. You play him. Shawn, your thoughts on Dallas Turner?
Yeah, I'm picking him up right now because there's just rumors going around that Van Ginkel's neck injury could be a little worse than what we're led to believe right now. And I think those are just speculations, not anything confirmed. So we've seen him produce, and with 100% of the snaps, that's fantastic. So I'm definitely picking up Turner.
All righty, I am too, particularly with that news, or let me rephrase that, rumors. I'll be
Yeah,
real
yeah.
clear,
With that
everybody.
fear,
Rumors, fear, exactly right. Moving to the defensive tackle position, Jonathan Allen played 91% of the snaps. Now, granted, when they only play 53 snaps, sometimes you see these interior defensive linemen playing a higher percentage of snaps because the snap count ends up roughly being about the same versus when they play a full game of around 63, when a team plays 63 snaps. He played 91%. Hargrave, who were worried about the injury being more serious, actually came back and played 75% of snaps. Both of those gentlemen had 5 tackles. Jalen Redmond, the third starter along the interior, played 68% of the snaps, had 3 tackles, but 2 sacks, including one that I could have made because the center basically said, Ole, I'm going to just run over here to the right and let you just run straight and kill my quarterback. And that's exactly what happened for Jalen Redmond on one of those 2 sacks. So, but Redmond in deeper leagues with Allen and Hargrave and Turner and Grenard and maybe Van Ginkel, boy, there's a lot of stars to block that could free up Redmond from time to time. So something to keep an eye on there. At the safety position, nice to see Josh Medlis getting back to his old role with playing 60% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. And with that, as you would expect, he tied for the team lead in tackles with 9, once again on only 53 snaps, which is fantastic. What's interesting, though, Harrison Smith only played 32% of the snaps. So I think, Shawn, this is going to be more than just he's returning from an illness or the easing him back in. I think they're changing things up a little bit. Tell me if you feel different. But I think it's more than easing him in, as I was saying, that he's going to be a third safety and is going to play 30 to 40% of the snaps. And that's what we're going to see. And this is going to be a last year, then he's going to retire off into the sunset at age 36.
yeah, that's exactly what this feels like. It's we're just kind of dragging his corpse along to finish out the season. Or shell of Harrison Smith probably sounds a little better, but maybe he picks it up into the 40s or something. But feels like every time they get the alignment set right, somebody else gets hurt. Van Ginkel's out now too, so I really don't know. It does feel like a change of the guard. He's just not going to play that much. Somebody you're not starting.
Yeah. Theo Jackson played 60% of the snaps deep and only had 1 tackle. And with all these other people cleaning up in front of him, hard for him to be productive. Now, Isaiah Rodgers, who once again we told you don't pick up coming off of that big old week where he intercepted everything and fumble recovered everything and touchdown everything and you name it. Now, he did get a blocked field goal, so I give him credit for that, but he only had 1 solo tackle and 1 assisted tackle. That's more about what we expect. All right, now we're going to move to the NFC South and go to the Falcons, who only played 57 snaps against the Commanders. Diablo and Caden Ellis both played 57 snaps, both had 5 tackles. Good news for Ellis is he had half a sack. The bad news is he played 42% of the snaps on the defensive line. That is painful as a
Wow.
Caden Ellis owner. And so that's another one that the pass rush just isn't there. It's going to take these rookies time. It's it's going to be year 2, I think, before we see more from Pearson Walker really affecting the pass rush, which means Ellis, I have a feeling, is going to play that edge more and then try and blitz up the middle more, which I think is going to kill his tackle numbers. So, folks, Caden Ellis, I'm trading Shawn if I can.
Yeah, we were crying about Jermaine Pratt playing 29% on the line, or John Campbell playing, 28, 26, stuff like that. And if he's played 42, we can't expect anything out of that.
Right.
That's,
So
yeah, that's not good.
So, so thankful he got that half a sack. But folks, we'll watch this again this week. But I'm in the mood to trade him if I'm seeing it. And look, this isn't the first. This is the most he's played on the defensive line, but he's been playing in the 20% range in several of the previous weeks. So this isn't the outlier is the number, not the fact that he's playing a lot on the D line. So I'd be looking to move on from Caden Ellis. And for perspective on that, Jalen Walker, 42% of the snaps. James Pierce, 40%, the two rookies I just alluded to. Jalen Walker, 2 tackles. James Pierce put up a goose egg. Now, Walker did get a quarterback hit, which is nice, but not going to help. Now, Leonard Floyd played 53% of the snaps. He did get half a sack. He shared it with Caden Ellis, but he's in his 30s, folks. I mean, so this is not good from a pass rush. All that, remember last week I talked about this. All that excitement for against the Vikings when the Vikings had all those injuries on the line and JJ McCarthy was holding the ball forever. That's not going to repeat, and you see that here in terms of the productivity that the Falcons had for sacks and quarterback hits. All right, moving to the secondary, Jesse Bates, 7 tackles to lead the team, played 54% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. Xavier Watts played 6% deep, which meant 36% close to the line of scrimmage, which wasn't great, but he still was second on the team in tackles with 6, including getting that interception, which some of these interceptions, even at my age, I think I can make mean. Some of these, some bad throws, folks. All right, and then Billy Bowman continues to be the slot cornerback for the Falcons, playing 100% of those slot snaps, 86% of the total snaps. Moving to Carolina, Christian Roseboom. Well, let me go back first. Carolina only played 49 snaps against the Patriots, so let's start there in this blowout game. Christian Roseboom didn't even have a Christian Roseboom line. Now, part of it was because it's 49 snaps, but usually it's 8 tackles, 5 solo, 3 assists. But we got 4 tackles, only one of which was solo. I don't know if we're panicking yet, but it shouldn't be surprising on those few snaps that Christian Roseboom did that. Now, what was a surprise, because we were pretty hard on Trevin Wallace, and we had a lot of people were saying that we would play and keep ahead of him. Now, he only had 5 tackles, but Trevin Wallace played 94% of those snaps. Now, granted, that's 46, which means he wasn't coming off the field in obvious pass situations as well. Yeah, Trevin Wallace also had a pass defense. But, Shawn, I ask you, does this change your feelings about Trevin Wallace at all at this point in time? Because he played 94%?
No, it's 49 snaps and a blowout. That's what I see here. This is just a 1 week outlier. I don't see him playing that much again.
We are 100% aligned, my friend. All right, moving to the edge position with Patrick Jones out, with DJ Wanham out, Nick Scorton and DJ Johnson were the 2 leading snap players for the Panthers on the edge. Scorton played 90% of the snaps, DJ Johnson 49%. DJ Johnson had 1 tackle during this game. He played so well on 50% of the snaps that the Panthers released him today. So he went from starting and playing half the game to being released. That's usually not a good sign, folks. Princely Manamalian, the other rookie, played 24% of the snaps, and Boogie Basham played 20% of the snaps. We're staying away from all these edges. We're not big fans of Jones or Wanham either as a side note, even when they do start playing. They do tend to occasionally get stats from lucking into sacks, but not from a skill set perspective on those two, Jones and Wanham. So just stay away from all these edges. The leading tackler for the Panthers, and I alluded to him how I picked him up last Saturday, which I was thrilled to do. Ashawn Robinson, 6 tackles, only one of which was solo, but I'll take tackles and 49 snaps. He played 59% of the snaps. Derek Brown, 76% of the snaps. Now in total, that's 37, which isn't a lot. But once again, only 4 tackles, one of which is solo. Shawn, we're off the Derek Brown train.
Yeah, he hasn't come back to that force that we were hoping for 2 years ago. So yeah, it's safe to move off of him.
All right. Nick Scott played 70% of his snaps deep and tied for the team leading tackles with 6, but we're not chasing Nick Scott, folks. Trevin Moehrig played 91% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage and gave us a ugly 3 unassisted tackles. Shawn, are you starting Moehrig this week in your lineup?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I'm
you're
not
not
worried
giving
about
up
this
on him
game.
yet?
No. This team will see more snaps come their way. And he's been one of the better safeties this year. Just a bad dud of a game.
All righty, the Saints are next up. So we're moving on to the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints played 59 snaps against the Bills. Demario Davis, 100%, tied for the team lead with 7 tackles. He's also tied for 7th in the league in tackles with 3 others at 38 as a side note. Pete Werner, though, his snap count continues to come down. He only played 69% of the snaps. And after a huge week last week, where he led the team with, I believe it was 13 tackles, snap count down and only had 3 tackles this week, Shawn. 1 week outlier, or are we panicking on Pete Werner?
I'm not big on Pete Warner anyway, so this just confirms my reason to not own him or to possibly release him, depending on the league. I'm
Wow,
done.
I'm not quite ready to release him, but it is concerning for sure. I am definitely looking for a different option for this coming week to see how this plays out, even against the Giants. Even with Troy Dye having those 13, I believe it was 13 total tackles against the Giants, that could be Pete Werner's role, though, now that I'm thinking about it. I may have to reconsider what I just said.
I
I might
stand
actually,
by my Pete Warner is just a guy and a guy I don't need.
all right, I'm going to play Pete Werner this week, and we'll have to see how this plays out, but only
I
because it's
wish
the
you the
Giants.
best.
I'm not saying I'm playing him as my number 1 linebacker, number 3, number 4
Okay.
linebacker.
Yeah, if
All
he's
right,
like your eighth linebacker, you should be fine.
nah, come on now. All right, moving to the edge, and we talked about what a great game Tuli T had for the Chargers against the Giants with the rookie quarterback, that offensive line. Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan, after doing nothing the week before, came back to life. Both had productive games. With Granderson 5 tackles, Jordan 4 tackles. They both had a sack. Jordan had 2 quarterback hits as well. Granderson had a couple of tackles for loss. Carl Granderson tied for 3rd in the league in sacks with 4.5. We're expecting a big game coming up this coming week, folks, against the Giants out of these folks. So we'll leave it at that because we talked about that earlier about the Giants. Okay, moving to the secondary at safety. Giannis Sanker played 71% of his snaps deep. He did have 5 tackles, but boy, at 71% deep, that is hard to trust, folks. So now he got an interception, which was great, and it was a pretty interception, but boy, it's hard to play that. But even harder to play right now is freaking Justin Reed. The Saints give him this big old contract to come over from Kansas City for his experience and leadership. He's from Louisiana originally, all that great stuff. 76% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage, Shawn. 1 tackle. And the week before, I think it was 3, if I'm remembering correctly. Don't quote me on that. But Justin Reed, man, if you haven't cut him yet, it's time to go.
I'm cutting him right now. Actually, he's somebody I've held on to. Just wanted to see how it played out with him and Giannis, but man, that's terrible production. That's worse than Pete Warner's stuff right there. Um, I'm dropping him for anybody that can get more than 3 tackles. Actually,
Which it shouldn't be too hard to find in the safety position. Okay,
right.
moving to the cornerback position. Alante Taylor played 100% of the snaps and 64% close to the line of scrimmage. Only 4 tackles, 3 solo, but nothing from a tackle for loss, nothing from a quarterback hit, nothing from a sack perspective, nothing. A little bit disappointing. Going to ride this another week with Alante Taylor, but getting a little bit concerned. Kool-Aid McKinstry tied for the team lead in tackles with 7, but they are picking on Kool-Aid McKinstry, folks. A sort of a Jalen Jones from last year, and the Saints don't really have anybody better to put in there. So that's where we are. Quincy Riley got more playing time and actually moved into the third cornerback slot. It'll be interesting to see if Quincy Riley continues to inch up in terms of cornerback playing time. And he had 4 tackles on 24 snaps. So not bad. So let's keep an eye on Quincy Riley. We're not picking him up or anything along those lines, but just something to keep an eye on. Moving on to Tampa Bay, and they played 58 snaps against the Philadelphia Eagles. Levante David played 98% of those. And as we've been talking about here, only 3 tackles. He did get a quarterback hit. He got 1 tackle for loss. But of those 3 tackles, actually only 1 was solo. His tackle rate is so low that it's hard to play him. See what I did there? See that pun there? Shawn, it's time to move on from Levante David, I think. He did get a big play
Yeah,
last week that kind of saved him, but boy, I don't think we can play him anymore.
I still have him on my bench in some really deep leagues, shallow leagues. I've already cut him. Uh, yeah, it's been a great career, but it's over. It's time to move on. It's the Dennis show down there in Tampa these days.
And Servasia Dennis played 91% of the snaps, but was second on the team with 8 tackles, 6 of which were solo. What was interesting, his PFF grade overall was much higher than the past several weeks. Now, so shout out for PFF for that reference and all. But maybe he's learning and improving as well, in addition to the playing time, which is a good thing for him as well, getting more and more comfortable playing Servasia Dennis for sure. Yaya Diaby played 81% of the snaps. Unfortunately, he didn't get a sack this week, but he did at least get 3 tackles. Hassan Reddick left the game early with a neck injury. No word yet in terms of the severity, but when you hear neck and leaving the game and not coming back, you get concerned. And that means there's some sort of rotation of Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell probably across from Diaby, and Diaby will probably stay in that 80% range. Makes me a little bit more excited about Diaby that on the playing time side of things, but a little bit sadder because there's no one on the other side across from him to potentially draw attention away.
Nelson actually played pretty well last year, if I remember correctly. Um, in that role, I want to say he had 7 sacks. That might be too high.
He it might have
Oh
been
yeah, yeah, it was way too
6.
high. It was 4 sacks, but
It
yeah,
was 4. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
but even with that, there's a reason they went out and signed Reddick as a free agent because they weren't
sure.
comfortable giving Nelson the full time role. Chris Braswell, the third rounder out of Alabama last year, hasn't taken the next step quite yet. So right now, and then they've already lost Kalijah Cansey as well. So this is not good for helping out Diaby.
For sure. This entire Buccaneers team, they're starting to look like the Ravens with all the injuries they've had, both offense and defense. It's a wonder that they're even competing right now.
That is correct. Plus the age factor that we talked about. Vita
Yeah,
Vea continues to be a beast at his listed 345 pounds. I think he weighs more than 345.
he's a big dude.
He is a big man. He had 3 tackles and 2 sacks, which was phenomenal. So he had a great week. So he keeps on chugging and producing out there. Moving to safety, Tyke Smith led the team in tackles with 9. He is tied for fourth among defensive backs in tackles with 33, but he only played 60% of the snaps close to line of scrimmage. Antoine Winfield was up to 46% close to line of scrimmage. But even with that, and we talked about this previously, he didn't have a big play, back down to the 4 tackles, 3 of which were solo. We talked about that. Okay, everybody was going to be mad if they dropped him or whatever in week 3. And we said, don't worry, week 4, this is based on his utilization, is going to come back down. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened here.
Yep, he did just enough to make everybody question, putting him on the bench or dropping him or whatever, just to make everybody kick themselves to rush out and pick him back up or to put him back in the starting lineup, only to let him down once again.
Exactly. Now, the cornerback slot, both Benjamin Morrison, the rookie from Notre Dame, as well as Jamel Dean, both of them got injured. Morrison with a hamstring, Dean with a groin. This could be a mess. Jacob Parrish, who had been their primary slot, might be forced to play a little bit more on the outside. What could get interesting, Shawn, is we could see a situation where Tyke Smith has to move back into that slot role potentially, and Kavion Merriweather gets some time at safety, depending if Morrison and Dean can't play. Because I don't think the Buccaneers want to play Josh Hayes on the outside full time right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe Christian Izian is still banged up
He's
as
injured
well.
as well.
So if he were to come back, he would probably take that slot role, and it would still push Parrish outside, but it would be ideal for Taki to not have to move around and probably lose some of
Compete.
that production.
Exactly right. All right, now we're going to move to the NFC West, folks, and the Arizona Cardinals. Played 66 snaps on the Thursday night game against the Seahawks. Mac Wilson played 97% of those, but only had 7 tackles. That feels more Mac Wilson normal like that we would have expected, with 4 of those being solo tackles. Akeem Davis Gaither, 79% of the snaps only, but led the team with 10 tackles, 5 of which were solo. He continues to be very efficient in the snaps that he's playing, and he's playing a little bit more than we would have expected based on past year's usage of the Arizona Cardinal number 2 linebacker. I still think it's because of all the injuries at cornerback that is happening. But similar to the Sanborn versus Murray situation, where you said you play Sanborn over Murray, would you play Davis Gaither over Mac Wilson, or would you stick with Wilson over Davis Gaither right now?
Right now, I I'm leaning towards Davis Gaither actually. Now, if they start getting some help back in that secondary, or some new signings or whatever, we may see that come back down and probably jump back on the Mac Wilson train here. But right now, it just feels like Davis Gaither just keeps earning time on the field. They just don't want to give it to him. It's kind of frustrating, if I'm being honest.
All right. Moving to the edge position, then Josh Sweat played the most snaps among the edge at 55%. Only had 2 tackles. He did get a sack again this week along with a forced fumble. Those sacks are keeping him afloat, but Shawn at 55% of the snaps, not in that 70% range, 75% range. He is hard to trust and to keep on relying on those sacks week after week from Josh Sweat. He's another one that I'd like to sell high if I could get someone to bite.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like Montez Sweat out there. It's a sack or nothing for him right now. Right now, he's getting the sacks, but it's it's a lot to ask for every single week. So eventually, he's just going to give us those 1 to 2 tackles with no sack, and then where it's a bad week for us. So if you can move him, this would be prime time to do it, especially with bye weeks.
Right. And moving to the defensive tackle position, no one moved. No one was above 55%, but a shout out to Calais Campbell, played 50%. Once again, got a sack along with his 3 tackles. And Darius Robinson had 3 tackles and a sack, but only on 45% of snaps. And he left with an injury. It was a chest/pectoral injury. He can't escape the injury bug, unfortunately. Just when we start seeing something from Darius Robinson, the first rounder from last year, just can't keep the health going. So someone I'll still want to monitor with that draft pedigree, but no one I'm playing or picking up. As we move to the safety position, Buda Baker played 100% of the snaps. Jalen Thompson played 98% of the snaps. Thompson second on the team in tackles with 9, and he played 60% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. In fact, Jalen Thompson, not Buda Baker, is tied for fourth among defensive backs in tackles, with Jalen Thompson having 33 tackles,
Wow.
which is interesting. Baker's not quite in the top 10 right now. Baker played 82% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage, which is phenomenal, but he only had 5 tackles, which is disappointing for that utilization and playing 66 snaps in that game. I've been talking about Dadrian Taylor Demerson, the fourth rounder from last year. He only played 50% of the snaps, but had 8 tackles, and he too played 67% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. I do like him for the future. I've talked about that several times. And if Baker or Thompson get injured, I want him on my teams. So that is someone just to keep in mind. Last at the cornerback position, Knox Melton played 97%. Denzel Burke and Keitrell Clark, just like last week, rotated at the other outside cornerback position. When they needed a fifth defensive back, it was Taylor Demerson. When they went to a sixth defensive back, it was normally Keaton Crawford, also safety. So that's how hurt they are at the cornerback position. Moving to the LA Rams, who played 61 snaps against the Colts. Nate Landman, 97% of the snaps, but another disappointing week on the tackles count with 3 solo and 3 assists for a total of 6 for those that might be math challenged. He did get 1 pass defense once again, but this is 2 weeks in a row of not, well, I can't say goose eggs, but I'll just call it laying an egg, basically.
Yeah, duds for sure. I don't know what the deal is here. I mean, he's getting the playing time. It's just not manifesting right now, and I don't know that it's something that's going to get fixed anytime soon either. I'm He's not a must start. I'll say that.
And the Rams, have typically put, for the most part, fifth round draft picks, undrafted free agents, you name it into that row, and they've been fairly productive in that number one role, not necessarily the number 2 role, but the number 1 linebacker role. But Landman's not doing it like these others. Maybe the Falcons did know what they're doing by letting him go. So right now, I'm looking for other options to start over him if I can possibly right now on my team, folks. I'm not dropping him, but looking for other options to start until we see that productivity increase. Omar Spates, only 74% of the snaps, 7 tackles, which would have been third on the team in tackles, but not something we can count on. He's usually in the 60 to 70% range. 7 tackles was a little bit high. Sean, we're not playing Omar Spates, right?
No, I'm staying away from him. It's about double his normal production. He's usually that 3 to 4 tackle kind of guy.
Right. Now, Jared Verse had a come back to life game against the Colts with 6 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, got a sack, got a forced fumble. So great game from Jared Verse. That was the Jared Verse we expected to be top 10 this year. We're kind of getting nervous about it. I know I certainly was last week, but nice to see him return to that. Byron Young, 3 tackles and yet another sack and 2 quarterback hits as well. He is tied for first in the league in sacks with 5. So Byron Young continues to produce. A couple of people, including Gary Davenport, who you talked about earlier, had him on the sleeper list for edge, and Gary was right so far. And Byron Young doing a phenomenal job. And the defensive tackle position, Kobe Turner, other than 2 quarterback hits, gave 0 tackles on 75% of the snaps. Braden Fisk had 1 quarterback hit on 52% of the snaps, but 0 tackles once again. Braden Fisk, I don't know if it's that injury or what, but we can't have Braden Fisk in our lineups, folks. At this point in time, even in defensive tackle required leagues, there's got to be somebody better to pick up there.
I'll tell you what, Kobe Turner's getting really disappointed right now too in defensive tackle required leagues because he was somebody on that uh, defensive tackle 2 kind of range that a lot of people were picking up, and he's not doing much. I think he has 1 sack on the season, just a couple tackles. So we're not seeing the big time production we were last year.
Right. That's where you got to be careful of names and where you drafted them early and things along those lines. And if they're not producing, folks, got to make some changes. Safety position: Quentin Lake and Cam Curl tied for the team lead in tackles with 9 each. Cam Curl also had 2 interceptions. Cam Curl played 69% of his snaps deep, only 31% in the slotted box, which has been fairly consistent for Cam Curl. But you know what? Despite that utilization, Shawn, do you know who is leading the league in tackles among defensive backs with 35?
I do because it's right here in the notes.
That is correct. It would be Cam Curl.
That's a
So,
bit surprising. I know he's had a good season, but I wasn't expecting it to be that good for him to be leading defensive backs and tackles. That's fantastic, outstanding. Because you probably got
and
him for nearly free in drafts.
exactly. And hopefully that trend will continue. We will be monitoring that to make sure that trend continues. All right, let's move over to the San Francisco 49ers, Shawn, who played 68 snaps in their loss to the Jaguars. Um, Fred Warner and D. Winters both played 100% of the snaps. D. Winters led the team with 10 tackles, 9 of which were solo, including a tackle for loss and a pass defense. D. Winters every week just continues to trend up and trend up and trend up. Loving us some D. Winters. Fred Warner, 8 tackles and a forced fumble. The reason I want to call out the forced fumble is they talked about on the broadcast that Fred Warner now leads the 49ers in career forced fumbles with 25. That is an incredible stat that I thought I'd share that I heard during the game. Now, also, Fred Warner is tied for 7th in the league in tackles with 3 other people at 38. So Fred Warner has given us the tackles as well, along with creating the big plays. D. Winters continues to improve. We're loving the 49ers defense. Now, last week, Shawn, we told folks Bryce Huff isn't getting a lot of playing time, and he's usually sack or bust. Sam O, which I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not even going to try. We said would be on the field more, but maybe give you a tackle or 2 more, but wasn't someone to go pick up. So when you look at Mikael Williams, who played 68% of the snaps, Sam O played 66%, Bryce Huff played 56%, and Yetur Gross-Matos played 29%. In total, if you add up all the quarterback hits from those 4 gentlemen, you
Mm.
get a total of
Zero. Nada.
zilch, nothing. Exactly right. Nothing. Not a quarterback hit, which means obviously not a sack from any of those guys. Bryce Huff did get 2 tackles, one of which was solo. Sam O didn't get any. Mikael Williams got 1 solo and 1 assisted.
I will say the Jaguars have been one of the better offensive lines as far as not allowing sacks. So take away, an elite guy like Bosa, and then a bunch of rotation guys going in against a very tough offensive line and good quarterback play by Trevor Lawrence there. So maybe they do better next week, but we're not holding our breath.
But that's exactly the point. This is a matchup based opportunity for Bryce Huff in particular. Michael Williams, the rookie, hasn't shown us enough. Even with, I believe he had 5 tackles last week, which was exciting and all, but still a rookie. So I think this is going to be a matchup based utilization of these folks, probably during bye weeks. But boy, I hope you didn't go spin out a lot of fab on Bryce Huff, as we caution you all not to. Moving to the secondary, Marquise Siegel tied Warner for second most tackles on the team with 8. He played 74% close to the line of scrimmage, but there's a major caution that came out today related to Marquise Siegel. It was reported today that Malik Mustafa is expected to begin practice heading into week 6. Now, that doesn't mean he'll play in week 6, but that means the 21-day window will be open. Does this mean that Marquise Siegel is going back to the bench because Mustafa did play more closer line of scrimmage last year than he did the year before, and so that's the role Siegel's playing. Pinnock played for Saleh in the past. He was targeted by Saleh to come over to San Francisco. It feels like Siegel is the one that could be in trouble when Mustafa starts playing. Shawn, do you agree with that?
Yeah, he's the one I'm most concerned about. Pinnock is always profiled as that deep guy, and like you said, Mustafa played up near the line. That's where Seiko is. So we only got a few more weeks potentially of Siegel. Mustafa starts practicing in week 6. Give him a couple weeks before he'd come back. So week 8. So not quite a month left of this Siegel train here. But
Okay. So
is it?
we like to help. Oh, sorry, Shawn.
I was gonna say here in a couple weeks would be a good time to go try to get Mustafa if he's out there.
Exactly right. So Siegel is someone who you can ride that train a little bit longer. But one of the things we like to do to help you all is to prepare in advance. So let's get prepared. Know that this is a high risk coming up, and that you're probably going to need a replacement for Siegel. All righty, moving on to the Seattle Seahawks. They played 67 snaps against the Cardinals in that Thursday night game. Ernest Jones played 100% of the snaps, second on the team with tackles with 8. He also picked up a half a sack and an interception. So a very, very complete, solid game for Ernest Jones. The big news is at the other linebacker position. We were cautioning majorly last week on Tyrese Knight, and it only got worse as he only played 31% of the snaps. Now, he did get 5 tackles, so people might just look at the tackles and not realize what happened on the snap count side, but only 31%. Drake Thomas, 66% of the snaps. So it looked like there was a rotation a little bit early on, and Thomas was always on the field in the passing situations. Thomas had 5 tackles, picked up a sack as well, and a pass defense. Drake Thomas has basically taken over that Tyrese Knight role, as it feels like, Shawn. And I think they're just easing Tyrese Knight out to be nice to him, at least it feels like. And
You're
Thomas
right.
is going to be playing that number 2 role for the Seahawks. Now, that number 2 role for the Seahawks isn't linebacker role, isn't always the greatest role in the world, Shawn.
Yeah, that's true. Even Knight, he struggled to get over 70% last year. And there was a lot of offseason talk about Tyrese Knight, and you and I were very cautious, and we're not buying into that. So there was no indication that things were going to be different. And here we are, week 4, and he's looking to barely be on the field right now. And this wasn't just because of injuries, because both Julia Love and Devon Witherspoon were back. So this isn't because we were down, 2 safeties and a slot guy. This is a trend.
All right, Shawn. So if you have Tyrese Knight and Drake Thomas is on waivers, you switching them out, or are you sitting on Knight and being patient?
No, I'm switching them out. I've seen enough out of Knight all last year and the beginning of this year. They don't trust him to be a full time
I
LB2.
am right there with you. I'm doing the
Yeah.
same thing as well. Okay, so moving to the edge position, a lot of people are going to be excited. Uchenna Nwosu, who they've been easing back in from injury, who's often very injured as a side note, folks. Don't lose sight of that. He went up from the mid 20s from the first 2 weeks that he played up to 57%. Now, part of that was probably also because Demarcus Lawrence left the game very early with an injury. But Nwosu ended up getting 2 sacks against Kyler Murray. So that's the good news. He also had 5 tackles. Shawn, Nwosu, edge 3 to give people perspective, or am I being a little bit too low on him?
It's not too low, um, and that's mid 3. I'm not big on Nwosu because of the injuries. Even on this team, he's going to find himself in a rotation, especially if Demarcus Lawrence was healthy. He wouldn't have got all the snaps he got this past week. So three's probably about his ceiling.
Yeah, so let's not go ahead and chase Nwosu, folks. Um, in deep leagues, if you're looking for something, maybe you had a Nick Bosa injury you haven't recovered from. Maybe you add him to your bench, but you're not spending a lot of fab on him. Leonard Williams played 79% of the snaps, had a sack and a half to go along with his 4 tackles. He continues to play phenomenally. And as Shawn pointed out to me, he's had at least half a sack in 3 straight games. So Leonard Williams, who I personally thought was going to fall off, that huge end of year run that he had, I must admit to this point, I am wrong. Um, but you see, I admit it when I'm wrong. So, but I'm going to add the caveat of so far. Let's see how the year continues for Leonard Williams. Byron Murphy played 60% of the snaps. He had been doing fairly well, but he wasn't expected to do well against this Cardinals offense. He only had 2 unassisted tackles. Once again, know those matchups, know who's giving up points to different positions, folks. Moving to the safety position, as Shawn talked about, Julian Love back from injury. Devin Witherspoon at cornerback also back from injury. Love had 6 tackles on 100% of the snaps. He played 69% deep. Kobe Bryant played 73% deep, had an interception, but had a goose egg, zilch, nada, zero, nothing from a tackles perspective. That's been my worry with Kobe Bryant, and that is a huge risk. So that this is the first time it's really played out to this severity. So Kobe Bryant, if you've been relying on him and it's been coming through a lot of these big plays and not as much as tackles, I might be looking for someone that has a little bit of a higher tackle floor at the safety position and someone who plays maybe closer to the line of scrimmage, many of which we've talked about here on this show today. Devin Witherspoon returns, and Devin Witherspoon led the team with 9 tackles, including 5 solo and a half a sack and a pass defense, and played 88% of the snaps close to the line of scrimmage. Love us some Devin Witherspoon. Now, the one thing that we have to keep an eye on is some rumors started that Tariq Woolen might be on the trade block as we get closer to the trade deadline. The risk and why I want to call that out is if he does get traded, does Devin Witherspoon start playing more on the outside and Nick Imanwari kind of move into that Devin Witherspoon role? We wouldn't see Manwari playing on the outside, but we could see him on the inside. Not saying that's going to happen, but it's just something to keep an eye out for. And if that trade happens, we'll have to watch very carefully Witherspoon's utilization. Shawn?
They practice something similar to that throughout camp and OTAs and stuff of moving Edmund Worry all over the place and flirting with putting Witherspoon out wide. I think if that were the case, we would actually see more Darion Kendrick in one of those positions, either in the slot or possibly out wide himself, just to keep Witherspoon inside. So I feel like that would be the safer play for the Seahawks, and not so much Emin Worry, especially with him still missing time, a lot of time actually with the high ankle sprain that's been keeping him out. So I feel like that's more likely to happen at least initially, but it's worth considering both scenarios. I think.
And Kendrick did play well in the absence of Witherspoon, but there was a reason the Rams released him as well. And I believe he was a 6th-round draft pick, if I'm remembering correctly. So he doesn't have that draft capital as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this does play out. Hopefully, Woolen doesn't get traded and doesn't hurt our Witherspoon shares, but we'll certainly watch out. And that concludes all 32 teams. Wow. And unfortunately, we're still rather limited, but hopefully we gave people a lot of great information. So before I forget, just want to remind everyone, Start Sit Show this Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central. I'll be there along with Shawn unless I'm becoming a grandfather. Follow me on X at RickyRod66. Follow Shawn at Shawn8386. If something were to happen, I'll let you all know through X if I'll be available or not. But if not, we'll have Shawn and we'll have somebody joining Shawn to run the Start Sit Show if that were to happen, if I were to become a grandfather. Okay. If you like this show, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. It takes like less than a second to click that little thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't as well. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, as we talked about earlier in the show, put them on this YouTube show. Shawn and I will periodically go and check those questions. on this IDP Advice show and our comments and suggestions, so forth, and we will give you all answers to your questions, suggestions, etc. You can, Shawn, anything else to wrap her up?
That's it. I feel like we've said enough.
We, with that, we will be back next week also to discuss week 5. We'll record on Tuesday night and release on Wednesday morning, knock on wood. And on behalf of Shawn Teague, this is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, and we're out of here, and we will catch you next time, everybody.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.